Today is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. The board meeting was called to order today at 5 p.m. with the board directly going into executive session under ORS 192.6602I to review and evaluate the performance of the superintendent or any other public officer, employee, or staff member, unless that person requested an open hearing. This executive session was announced in advance on February 5th, 2021, Friday, both by listing it on the agenda and posting it online. Executive sessions are not open to the public. It's now 2 minutes past 6 p.m. We are reconvening our meeting with the public session, which is our regular business meeting. And I would like to take attendance. So as I call your name, will you please acknowledge Vice Chair Bethel?
Here.
Dr. Blasi.
Here.
Dr. Hine.
Here.
Dr. Leopold.
Here.
Dr. Kylo.
Here.
Dr. Goss. Dr. Goss. Okay, so I don't hear Dr. Goss. She was having some technical difficulty. Advisor Mebinton.
Here.
Thank you. And I, Satya Chandrakiri, am also present here. Thank you. I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is critical in building the necessary trust to coexist in harmony with one another. Indigenous tribes and bands have been apparent on the lands of the Willamette Valley across Oregon and throughout the Americas since time immemorial. In this valley, the ancestry of the Kalapuya reaches the furthest back in time, reminding us that this plentiful place has been called home by its original inhabitants long before the names of the snowy peaks and bountiful waters were re-identified. Today, we acknowledge that the people of this land still exist and inhabit this valley, not as heirs to it or artifacts, but as reciprocal contributors to the modern society we live in. We forward our respect to the first peoples of this land, the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon, and those who have ceded lands here. We reflect on the displacement, removal, and genocide of indigenous people that occurred throughout Oregon and beyond. In so doing, we truly honor the gravity of the past and endeavor to see that people may live in harmony and equity on this land for posterity. May this acknowledgement carry resonance as a tool of peace over the land and waters we mutually rely upon. Please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Let's please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. The request of Director Leopold, there's going to be an agenda modification. And one of the action items, 6C, would be moved to the next school board business meeting. And it will not be an action item today. So.
Chair Chandragiri, remember we also have an agenda modification that the key performance indicator report will be at our work session in January.
Thank you. And there is another agenda modification. One of the key performance indicators report, board report, will be moved to next month during the work session. Is that right, Superintendent Perry?
I'm confused. Not that that's hard to do, but you said January, it's now February. That is it? And then you said the next month, which would be March. So is it February or is it March?
Superintendent Perry, when are we
February.
moving the key performance indicator?
February work session. I apologize.
So February work session, February 2021 work session, we'll be moving into February 21 work session. Thank you for the clarification. With that, I'm going to ask Superintendent Perry to kindly go to the next item on spotlights on success. Please, Superintendent Perry.
All right, welcome everyone. It's great to see everyone tonight, and I love having extra guests online. So the first spotlight is going to be presented by Wendy Roberts, our Federal Programs Director. And I'm assuming Wendy's here. I don't have enough screens.
I'm here.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi.
There you are. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too. So are we all set?
We're set. You're on. Thank you.
Right. Well, good evening, Chair Chandragiri and board members. It is my pleasure to highlight tonight an important community partnership supporting our students. I'd like to first recognize Valena Howard, who is on the call with us tonight. Valena is a Willamette University professor and director of Indigenous Partnership Programs. I'd also like to introduce some Willamette University scholars, Adina Goldstein, Bethany Fletcher, Francesca McClure, Madison Houston, and our own board member, Director Jessie Leopold-Pion, who have also joined us this evening. These scholars, with the support of Valena, have worked to provide academic coaching, formerly or also known as tutoring, for Indigenous students who are enrolled in our Indian education program. This is the first year of the coaching program in this form in its current state, and we are so excited to see it grow. Twice a week for 2 hours, these Willamette scholars work with Salem-Keizer students. The scholars support our Indian education students in kindergarten through 12th grade, academically and through skill building. On top of academic support, the Willamette scholars work to provide social-emotional help. They serve as mentors, as role models, and by creating a system to uplift the students. There is no denying that there are a multitude of struggles facing students right now. In a time when the challenges of online learning intersect with the tumultuous state of our nation and world, this support is especially crucial. We are so grateful for the work of the Willamette scholars in supporting the social, emotional, and academic growth of our Indigenous students. We are looking forward to seeing this program grow and develop year after year. Thank you so much for your hard work. And I have an even bigger list of students that have been supporting with this program since spring, fall of 2020 as well. So we really, truly cherish this partnership.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Valena and Willamette Scholars. We really appreciate you. Thank you for being here tonight. All right, the next spotlight is the staff equity support recognition, and Alan Demers, the principal at Myers Elementary. Hey, Alan, it's good to see you. Is going to be presenting this spotlight tonight.
Good evening, Chair Chandragiri, excuse me, and board members. As you know, Salem-Keizer is known for educators who go above and beyond when it comes to supporting our students. They have an unshakable desire to help every student succeed, no matter what it takes. Myers' second grade teacher, Ellen Bergman, is one of those educators, and I'm proud to recognize her work this evening. Last fall, Ms. Bergman grew concerned when one of her students failed to log into her online class. Upon further investigation, she learned the student, as well as the student's sibling, had not attended school in any form since last March when classes went online. It was then Mrs. Bergman began making phone calls. She advocated for her student and the sibling with the equity office, with technology, and with transportation. She was on the phone nearly every day for a period of many weeks, doing her best to provide these students with everything they would need to attend online class. She made home visits. She organized an internet hotspot, but they still were not attending regularly. She knew that every day they were unable to attend meant they were not receiving an education. So she took on a much bigger step. She worked to get the students into the building. Jumping through hoops and working with policies at multiple levels, Ms. Bergman finally got permission to bring them into the classroom. This was back at a time when hardly anyone was allowed into the building. Ms. Bergman still provides 30 minutes of extra academic support each day with her student, helping her get caught up. Thanks to Ms. Bergman's perseverance, patience, and persistence, the students have been back in school for many weeks now. We are so proud to have educators like her at Myers and throughout our district. Thank you and keep up the good work, Ms. Bergman. Congratulations.
It doesn't look like she's on tonight. She was also nominated by one of her colleagues too. So that's how it got to my inbox. So please pass on our appreciations to her.
Will do.
All right, the next spotlight is from McKay High School, and Principal Schoper from McKay High School, I believe, is here tonight to present this spotlight.
Yes, thank you.
Good to see you, Principal Schoper.
You too. Good evening, board and Superintendent Perry. Before I get into this, we have a group of students here. If you guys could turn on your cameras along with Mrs. Hull, we'll go ahead and acknowledge you and celebrate you here. It is my honor to share some exciting news. A group of 9 students from McKay High School have been selected as semifinalists in the 2021 Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition. These students are active in our engineering program with Mrs. Katrina Hull, who is joining us this evening with her students. This group was recently awarded $15,000 for their innovation and have moved into a final round of competition later this spring, next month in March. The objective of the students' project is to invent something that will help farmers and their employees handpick blueberries more efficiently. They have put in countless hours and hard work, interviewing workers, managers, and brainstorming various solutions to solve this problem. One of their potential solutions is a bucket which would automatically sort out green berries, leaves, and debris. Another is a small mobile conveyor belt and sorting system that will save time by limiting the need to walk between fields and the main sorting system. Finally, they have proposed a berry catching skirt that would limit waste. Students are now interviewing farmers and determining which of the solutions they brainstormed will have the biggest impact in industry. From there, they will work to do small-scale prototyping and testing of their designs. Finally, they will build a real prototype that will be tested in the field. They will use this information to create a video about the solution to submit to the competition in March. As principal of McKay and on behalf of our community, we are incredibly proud of their hard work, their innovation, and their desire to help others. We wish them luck in the next round of competition. Congratulations to all you have accomplished. And as always, go Scots. I'm going to hand this quickly over to Mrs. Hull, who's going to do just a quick intro of our students who are joining us tonight.
We have a freshman, Oscar, a sophomore, Bianca. Our juniors are Tyler, Edeline, Ethan, New, and Ina. And we have 2 seniors on the team, Ricardo and Leslie. Congratulations, students.
Thank you. Nice job, Hull.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Nice work.
Muchas gracias. Hicieron muy buen trabajo.
All right. Our last spotlight tonight is...
El último reconocimiento esta noche.
Yeah. I'm just going to give Aaron a minute to make sure they're muted.
Voy a esperarme para...
She keeps unmuting in the wrong spot.
Okay. All right. So the final spotlight for tonight is going to be presented by Stephen,
El último reconocimiento.
Director of Music and Drama. Stephen, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you. Good evening.
Mucho gusto de tenerte aquí esta noche.
Are we okay to go?
¿Estamos listos para continuar?
Please give me about 15 seconds.
Permítanme unos 15 segundos.
Okay. I
Okay,
think we're ready
let's go
now.
ahead.
All right.
All right. I'm honored to recognize the musical achievements of one of our
Quiero reconocer a
and also one of our exceptional administrators.
de uno de nuestros.
Should I wait a little bit longer?
Tengo que esperar un poquito más.
Yeah.
Sorry, we are communicating with our interpreters right now, trying to get this cleared up. Okay, I hear we are good to go. We'll start over again.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair Shanagiri and board members. I am honored to recognize the musical achievements of one of our Salem-Keizer students and also one of our exceptional administrators today. First, I would like to honor Principal Laura Tiffin of South Salem High School. This year, Principal Tiffin was awarded the 2021 Outstanding Administrator Award by the Oregon Music Education Association. This award is given to school administrators who provide outstanding support to music education in their schools that goes above and beyond. Principal Tiffin was one of 2 administrators across the state of Oregon to receive this award in 2021. It is a testament to her dedication to South's music program and her recognition of the importance of music in the school curriculum. Working to provide both visible and behind-the-scenes support has made Laura an outstanding administrator and champion for music in her school. So congratulations, Laura. And we're going to continue the McKay honors tonight. So secondly, I'd like to honor Sam Ibarra, a student in the McKay High School Orchestra led by conductor Alex Figueroa. Sam was recently named co-champion for an entry into the Oregon Music Education Association State Composition Contest. Sam's original composition, more than 15 minutes long, mind you, is entitled Kintsugi Theme and Variations. We are so impressed by the musical talent and dedication of Sam. If Sam, you've got your camera off, you can go ahead and turn it on so we can say hello to you. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize Alex, Sam's teacher. Alex is new to McKay this year and has helped provide Sam with the support necessary to enter this competition. Both Alex and Sam were recognized at the conference in January. We're so proud of the work of all 3 of these outstanding individuals, and we cannot wait to see what they accomplish next. Congratulations, Sam, Alex, and Principal Tiffin.
Thank you so much. And Stephen, thanks for all your work on behalf of our music programs and working like crazy to get some in-person music going on. I know the hours you're putting in on that. And Principal Tiffin, thank you also for your leadership.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Superintendent Perry, are we ready for the reports?
Perry, I'm going to turn the next section to Superintendent Perry for the report section, starting with reports. Ready to school, safe learners, return to school update.
All right, so we have quite a lengthy, detailed presentation just because we think it's really important for you to understand the details related to getting kids back in person and also some of the challenges within the system. I was thinking about it last night as we stopped a system and redirected resources. Now, as we come into in-person learning, we have to think about how do we shift the system back in a very different way that we've never really experienced before, because we haven't done a system like this that's hybrid and the transportation challenges and a number of others. So we thought it was really important to update you with where we are, how we're thinking about things, some of the safety protocols, And so you can get a really important look at the things we're working towards. So with that, I believe I'm starting with Dr. Sproles. And how about if after we just take, well, I'm trying to think, how do you want to do questions tonight, Chair Chandragiri? Do you want to wait till the end?
Yeah, let's wait till the end, and then we can do like one question each, and then we can make sure everybody gets a chance.
Okay. All right. Dr. Sproles, I think you're first.
Thank you, Superintendent Perry and Board Chair Chandragiri and board members. We are excited to be able to share a lot of information tonight about our return to school plans and some updates. And we hope that this will start a dialogue that will continue on for the next several weeks between our parents and our school leaders to find out more about what a hybrid model will look like, starting with our K-5 students and then working up from there. So before we jump in, I just wanted to let you know that, so tonight I'll be talking for the first few slides, and then Chief Mike Wolf will talk a little bit about some of the safety protocols that we're implementing and some structural changes that we've made to our facilities in relation to those safety protocols. And then Dr. Udosanata will be talking about secondary and our plans, because there's a lot of interest in, well, now that we have an elementary plan rolling, those of you that have middle and high students, as I have a high school student as well, wondering about what the next steps are. So we don't want to leave people hanging, and we will address those as well. So as Superintendent Perry stated, it's a relatively lengthy presentation with a lot of information as we go through. So before we start, I just wanted to revisit our considerations for when we decided to move toward a hybrid model. We have great news right now about our county-wide data. So those of you who are somewhat obsessed with our COVID data, like I am, and I think Director Bethel as well checks that site many times a day, you probably already know that our numbers continue to decline. For the first time in the last 7 weeks, we're below 300 cases per 100,000, and we continue a downward trend. And I think that's really a testament to the citizens of Marion County and Polk County and their commitment to maintain what we know works, which is physical distancing, facial coverings, reducing large gatherings, and hand washing. And you're going to hear that same theme a lot tonight, because that's what the research tells us what works. So, but when we decided to go to a hybrid model, we still want to keep in mind our county-wide data, but we're also going to focus more on school-specific data. We now have the ability to look at what do COVID cases look like in a specific neighborhood and related to a specific school setting. So the county-wide data is one kind of large aggregate data point, but it doesn't tell the whole picture. So we will be focusing on school-specific data as well. Part of that is we need to ensure that our safety protocols are firmly in place. We have protocols that will keep students and staff safe, and we need to make sure that they're being followed in all of our learning settings and across all of our organization. And we'll talk a little bit today about how we're going to ensure that they are followed. We also need to maintain really strong collaboration with Marion and Polk counties. They are the drivers to be able to help us interpret the data and make ongoing decisions related to keeping schools open and then expanding services to other groups of students. Our access to vaccinations was a key additional layer that staff could choose to opt into to provide additional security, and one more step towards keeping them safe from COVID when they do return to work. And then also we've had COVID-19 testing availability. And this was part of the governor's speech when she came out in December and talked about that. And so we're moving forward with the ability to rapidly test symptomatic people who come to school, be that students or staff. So I think it's important, and I am not good at times at just taking a breath and celebrating where we are, because I think we are moving forward with a hybrid model that we originally started talking about in June. And we spent a lot of time and energy focusing on this model, hoping for an August launch. And then our numbers went high, the metrics changed, and we weren't able to do this until right now. So I think it's important for us to recognize what has gotten us to this point. And I loved the spotlights tonight, because I should just play all of them instead of say all of this, because they're evidence of the way that our community has really tried hard with an equity lens to be able to reach all of our students. We've done that by providing access. We've done that by teachers going the extra mile for our students every single day. We've done that by doing home visits and making sure that people have access to essential things like food and clothing during this pandemic. So the equity focus has driven a lot of the way that we've responded as a district. We've established really strong relationships with our labor unions, and we continue to have almost daily conversations with union members and union leaders to be able to make sure that we're crafting a plan that works. A key part that a lot of time goes unseen is that we've maintained operational consistency from when the pandemic first struck. And so we've maintained transportation efficiency. We've dropped off meals throughout our community. We've maintained food service, serving over 2 million meals and continuing to serve students and families with meals, a custodial service, maintenance staff. All those people have been keeping our organization running while we prepare for this moment in time. And so they've allowed us to launch this moment. We've also had extremely successful preschool programs, limited in-person and home visits. We were on the cutting edge of offering in-person supports for our students compared to most other school districts around the state. And our ability to do that gave us an ability to test our safety systems. So our preschool promise teachers, our Head Start teachers, they were some of our essential childcare workers that were working back April. They've been working with kids since we've been in CDL as an organization. We also have thousands of educators that are working tirelessly to make CDL work, which is important because, as we'll discuss today, just because we're in hybrid doesn't mean that we still don't have CDL supports for students. We need to have both simultaneously. I mentioned our strong relationships. Superintendent Perry, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the way we have really used limited in-person instruction has prepared us for this moment. Like we have practiced, and I think that's really important to recognize all the safety protocols through limited in-person. We cannot, if we could go back and do it again, we'd do it just like we did because we practiced.
Yeah, thank you. And that gave us an opportunity to try out the protocols that were on paper, but we hadn't actually tried them with kids in the building. And so we've had kids in every single one of our buildings supporting students. And so it gave us a chance to do that really, really well. And then I think we can't lose sight of our 42,000 students and all of their families that have been supporting their learning and all of our educators that have been walking alongside them during this journey. So I think it's an important time for us to just take a collective breath and realize that there's a lot of things that have gotten us to this point. And we have a lot to be proud about for that, for the way our system is now ready to launch for a hybrid model. So here's some hopeful research that has been coming out just in the last couple of weeks about reopening schools. And I thought I would just touch on a handful of these, and then we will have links to these on our website as well with the actual citations. The American Academy of Pediatrics conducted a study in North Carolina, focusing on North Carolina schools. The schools were actually open during a time of high COVID transmission within the state. They found that they had a sample size of 100,000 students and staff in a large school system. There were 32 cases of transmission, and all of the cases were student to student. None of the cases were student to staff that they were able to document in their study. CDC did a similar study in Wisconsin. And again, the Wisconsin county that they chose to study was one that was in extreme COVID high numbers like we've never even seen in Oregon before. And they decided to reopen schools in a targeted way. They focused specifically on, and here's the theme again, masks, physical distancing, cohorting, and hand washing. When those protocols were followed, and these set of schools followed them really carefully and closely, there were only 7 cases that spread throughout the 4 months that they used as a study trial period for the CDC. The New England School of Medicine and Journal of Medicine they've done a lot of studies on the vaccine to be able to see whether they're effective or not. And the rate of effectiveness for the vaccines are coming out surprisingly high. Most flu vaccines are in the 70 or 80%, and our COVID-19 vaccines that we are using are in the 90s to 95%. So that's good data as well. Again, I just want to reiterate, people aren't required to get the vaccine, but it is an additional layer of support that we've offered our staff. And then finally, we have a lot of our SKPS localized data, and we've had strong implementation of protocols, and we know that we are going to have COVID-19 in our schools. We have it in our communities. It's in, when you go to the grocery store, it's at the grocery store with people that are interacting with you at the grocery store, and it will be brought into our schools. And it has been brought into our schools this fall, but we've used our processes and our protocols to identify, isolate, and quarantine when that does happen to minimize spread and then get those students back in the classroom. So again, as Superintendent Perry alluded to, the limited in-person practice rounds that we've been able to have to practice our procedures have proved to be very, very successful, and we have our systems in place. So I believe this is Chief Wolf.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate the promotion. Good evening. So tonight I just have 3 slides, and I wanted to start off with, as both Superintendent Perry and Craig has said, we've been preparing for this for a long time. We have been planning and planning and planning. We've gone through several iterations of the Ready School Safe Learners. And the latest iteration has given us the direction we need to move forward in a few key areas. And one is that we were able to strengthen our on-site accountability. And so we've always had a physical distancing coordinator in place. And we've strengthened that by adding the safety and health piece as well. So we've updated all of our internal documents. We've got the training protocols in place. And we have our physical distancing and safety coordinator. We've added a liaison position as an additional layer of protection as well. Remember, there's the reporting of violations of safety protocols, and that's really important. Weaves right into our safety committees, which have been in place forever. They're, our connection to OSHA and OSHA requirements. And in the RSSL, OSHA is obviously the lead agency with respect to health and safety protocols and requirements. And so our safety committees, we've updated manuals, we've updated checklists, we've updated responsibilities. We have the reporting protocols in place. We also have an anonymous QR code for individuals who feel that that would be the better way to identify issues. And that goes directly to our safety and risk management department so that we're constantly monitoring and tracking the situations in our buildings. We also have the training for staff and students. Now remember, yes, we have expanded in Lippy, and we're about ready to scale up in our elementary schools. And so we'll have more kids and we'll have more staff together than we've had before. And that's going to take, we're going to have to settle in. And we've got the protocols in place. We've talked about them forever, right? You've heard this over and over and over again. It becomes real really quick when we move into hybrid. And that's what we've got to get through that first cycle of operationalizing all of the planning as we scale up. And so that's where, so we've got new protocols in place. Imagine that the last time as a student you were in the school, how long ago that was. And now you're going to come in and things are going to look significantly different. There'll be different restrictions on movement throughout the building. Common areas won't be areas that you can be common in anymore, right? You can't congregate in these areas. Gymnasiums will be used for different things. Cafeterias, you may not see one for lunch, for a while. And then libraries, probably not going to be used in exactly the same way. Playgrounds are going to look the same, but there'll be different restrictions on them. So it's just really important for us. I think training is absolutely essential for staff and students. And part of it is we've got to do it and we're ready. I guess our message is, I've been ready for a long time. Okay, so there's lots and lots of questions about filtration and ventilation. So I'm not going to give you the 101 on HVAC, but in case you're interested, it's heating, ventilation, and cooling. There's not a whole lot of cooling in a lot of buildings, but those, let me put it to you this way. If you're in a building or our brand new spaces with the bond and you can't open a window, that's usually a good indication that you have a central HVAC system, okay? All of our systems are tuned and they've been retuned for maximum outside air pulling in and a refresh rate in each space of approximately 3 to 4 times per hour. So a lot of people are interested in, what's going on with our filtration systems. We can spend a lot more time on this. We're not going to tonight, but just wanted to give you kind of a sense. We do know through the risk assessment and mitigation process, for instance, when you're assessing risk, if you can eliminate it, you do. As Craig said, we can't eliminate the virus, but we can mitigate it and we can manage through it. And that's what a lot of our protocols are intended to do. So we have identified areas for portable HEPA air filtration systems. And through the risk process, we've identified our special education self-contained classrooms. We will be putting the HEPA filtration systems in there to help. It doesn't mean that the ventilation in the buildings that they're in isn't working. This is an additional mitigation step. We'll also be looking at our isolation rooms in each building, because remember when kids get sick or are presenting symptoms, our protocols are to move them into the isolation room for further analysis. And then we're also looking at staff rooms. We know that staff rooms are really important. And so we'll be putting air filtration systems in there as well. And front offices, primarily because there's just a lot of movement. There's, it's one of the busiest areas, one of the busiest places in the school. Just to give you a sense of scale, we're spending currently a little over $400,000 on the filtration systems themselves and the filters. We're also, the disinfecting wipes. Now remember, the RSSL has sort of tightened up on disinfecting. And we're there. We've spent approximately $1.5 million on PPE, including additional disinfectant wipes for every classroom. So there'll be a tub, a big tub, not the ones you buy in the store, of disinfectant wipes in every classroom. Remember, the most effective means of combating COVID is hand washing, face coverings, and physical distancing. It's not hand washing and disinfecting your hands, right? So by disinfecting, we're going above what would be a normal process. And we've got all of the supplies in place and on order, because the other thing to remember is everyone in the world literally is looking for the same stuff at the same time. So you've got to get in the queue. And I will say that Dave Hughes and his team over at Auxiliary Services and Purchasing are doing a phenomenal job keeping us in the queue for the supplies. And then we have the COVID-19 rapid antigen testing. This is required to offer for any symptomatic individual, staff, or students in each school if we're above the 350 per 100,000, or we're in the transition category, which we are now, which is between the 200 and 350 per 100,000. So we're centralizing the process through our district health authority so that even though it's a self-administered test, we also know that we need to be controlling and monitoring the actual process of the test. There's huge reporting requirements. And we also want to make sure, I mean, when you're thinking about a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old, and we have consent, we wouldn't allow this to happen without parental consent. That it may not be the easiest thing in the world for them to do. And we want to make sure that we've got systems and processes in place so that it can be done correctly and can be reported to OHA accordingly. And so we'll be implementing this process. It'll be through our district health authority. It'll be a school-based process with support from the district. We also have our communication protocols in alignment with the newest version of the RSSL. And that's for every positive case, whether it's staff or students, we send out communication directly to the parents of the school and to all staff so that everyone is informed. And as Craig said, we have COVID that enter our buildings. And we have systems and processes in place. We have our COVID-19 response team that kicks in. We have our custodial cleaning and disinfecting teams that will move in when necessary to take care of the situations. What we like to think about is we get sick, people get sick, our buildings don't. And so our process is to remove the illness, isolate, quarantine, and then get our buildings back up for use as quick as safely possible. All right, and then the last slide are just some operational challenges and opportunities. So our transportation department's all of the operations side of the house has been doing just a phenomenal job. As Christy said earlier, everybody in the district has, but I get to talk about operations right now. So our transportation department, throughout this whole situation, we didn't lay off any employees. We kept all of our bus drivers and we kept them actively engaged. They're moving 5,000 meals a day, 5,000 to 6,000 meals a day. We've turned CTEC into a major food production and distribution center. And if you want to see synchronized driving and loading, you should come by CTEC and watch that operations. So we're ready to support the pre-K-5 hybrid, and that includes all of our students with special needs K-12. So when we talk about moving into hybrid, transportation is ready to make that happen. They're already, and also support secondary limited in-person instruction. They're very close to telling us when they would be able to support the full K-12 hybrid. We just didn't have all the analysis done tonight to be able to say that, but it's transportation. So my sense is they'll figure out a way to make it happen, quite frankly. The grab and go meals, just a slight correction, we're pushing about 1.3 million meals at this point. And there'll be a trade-off because there's about 48 or 50 meal distribution sites that transportation takes into the neighborhoods. So as we transition into moving more kids to school, we will transition out of moving more meals into neighborhoods, right? And so when we go full hybrid, well, the kids will be in school, right? So that's where the meals are generally. But we wanted to make sure that you understood the trade-off that we'll be heading into, and we'll keep you informed and the community informed along the way as well. And then the last piece is classroom capabilities. Our elementary schools are all set for hybrid. So we could do it today. We're not, but we could do it today. And the classrooms are set. We're moving into secondary as we speak with a focus on high schools, and then following up with middle schools and reconfiguring every classroom for the maximum amount of kids that we can put in safely given the RSSL guidance. And that's what I have for operations.
All right. Hey, Chair Chandragiri, would you be interested in taking a few questions right now before we're going to move into elementary schedules, and secondary is what's still coming up, but that's up to you. We can keep going, or you can.
No, I think let's take a few questions and kind of go around and make sure we don't miss anybody. So we'll start with Director Lippold. Do you have one question? So we'll kind of go make sure everybody gets around.
I'm just trying to process a lot of the information. That was a lot all at once.
All right.
I'm sure I'll give them to you later.
Vice Chair Bethel.
I do have one question for Mr. Wolf about those meals. So it's no secret that our kids have always had a need for food at home.
And you guys have done such a remarkable job with the grab and goes and letting kids take extras to be able to kind of fill in that gap at home. Is the plan when they come back, I know it's just hybrid, so 2 days a week right now to start with, how will they be able to supplement the meals at home on the days they're not in school? And then on the days they are in school, will they be able to take meals home in the event that they need meals at home? Because I'm sure we all know that just because we're going back to school doesn't mean everybody's going back to work.
Right, right. Great question. So basically, when you come in that day, you'll grab the meal for that day. And when you go home, you'll grab the meal for the next day. Does that make sense? So you're in, you grab the meals for the day that you're in. When you're leaving, you grab the meals for the next day that you won't be there. And we will continue as long as ODE allows this program to continue. We'll still have grab and go at the front of every school that is in hybrid. So it'll be kids coming in grabbing meals. The logistics are going to be challenging. Kids coming in grabbing meals, kids leaving taking meals home, and then from 10 to 1 or 11 to 1, grab and go for the community.
Thank you.
So the community component, I think, is what I missed. So thanks for mentioning that. There is going to be that in addition for parents to come and support if need be, and get support if they need it.
As long as ODE allows this feeding program to continue.
Okay, I hear you. Thank you.
Dr. Hine, do you have a question?
Nope, no question.
Dr. Goss? Yeah. Is that space bar the unmute, or is there a separate? Okay. Do you want to type in the chat and I can't hear, and I can read it aloud? Dr. Goss, I can't hear you because you're still muted.
If I could offer a suggestion, Director Goss, just press your space bar and that should unmute, but hold it down while you want to talk.
Okay. Keep it pressed. Hold it down. Space bar. There you are. Go ahead now. Oh, no. Director Goss, I can't hear you. All right.
There may be an issue with their settings that I can walk her through.
All right. Director Goss, we'll have somebody call you or text you and see how to kind of help you reset the settings. So I'd like to see if we can go to Director Kylo and then we'll.
No questions.
Director Blassie. Okay. Advisor Mabinton, do you have a question? I can't hear you. You have to unmute. Oh, you have no question?
No questions, just processing all the information.
Thank you very much. Now, I have a question, Mr. Bull. A lot of these children who have to take meals home, their families also may not be having, they may also be going through food scarcity. Is there a way to tie up with some Marion Polk Food Share or some other kind of nonprofit so that you can use the same system of distribution to kind of give them a backpack full of food when they go home maybe once a week, so that the family and perhaps the siblings who are not in school also can. I mean, using the same infrastructure, our transport, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. We really engaged in that in a big way early on in the spring and expanded our site, multiple sites actually. We've actually talked to the food share recently within the last month or so. They're not in a position currently to do that, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't be in the future. We have to be, logistically, it's obviously it's doable. It's also something that we have to be very careful and separate our food service with that food service. And so the best thing I can say right now is I know that some of the pantries that were closed are now open. Like Four Corners was our first partnership because the pantry right next to Four Corners was closed, but it's open again. So I think the best thing that we could do is help communicate the locations for the food services with Marion Polk Food Share.
I was hoping that all agencies could collaborate and using the same infrastructure of distribution to make sure, rather than having to duplicate distribution, right? Mm-hmm. So that just a thought came to my head, sorry. So that we can align all the different agencies to work around food scarcity. That's the reason I brought this. Right, if you've kind of gone through one round of questions, I don't think I missed anyone. Dr. Goss needs some technical assistance. So let's go through the rest of the presentation and then we'll go back to round 2 of questions.
And I'm gonna see if Bob can get the number from Alice and call Kathy. I think it's
already working on it.
Thank you.
Okay, so ready to jump into talking a little bit more specifically about the elementary day, and then Dr. Dosanata will finish up with talking secondary as well. So I have about 3 slides, and then he'll jump in. So here's our timeline for when we are going to implement our hybrid model. All of our elementary staff, so our licensed and classified staff, will begin working on the 22nd. We will offer our first day of hybrid learning for K-1 and elementary self-contained classrooms on March 2nd, and that will be a big day for us. That will be a big day. I can commit to the school board, we'll bring some pictures of kids walking in the doors on that day to be able to celebrate collectively that day. Then on the 9th, grades 2 and 3 will start hybrid. On the 16th, grades 4, 5 will start hybrid, with the goal of having our elementary schools in hybrid before spring break. And we've had a couple questions on why not stagger it longer and wait until after spring break for some grade levels. This was a decision made by our school-based team to be able to get in before spring break, gives us a week of spring break to analyze our processes and protocols, to be able to see how things went before we welcome K-5 back on the 30th. So that was actually a tactical decision. We had similar things when we were right before winter break, and we found it was to our advantage to be able to use that time to reflect before launching again. So that's why that system is set up that way. And then on the 30th, we start K-5, and we will be moving forward with that until the end of the school year.
And can I just make one clarification on the all staff return? We are doing a bit of staggering of staff because remember, as we have our K-1 starting in hybrid, our other grade levels are still in CDL. So they're navigating that. We're encouraging people to get in when they can, but they're also navigating that they've set up a home workspace as they transition back.
So thank you for that, Superintendent Perry. And I think it's important to note that for like our 2, 3, and 4, 5 teachers, they're going to continue to teach in CDL as we're bringing our K-1 teachers back. So be able to allow them to do that in their home stations, which are set up for that right now before transitioning back, because we didn't want to create a double transition. So thank you for noticing that. So this is just a snapshot, and we've gotten a few questions from board members and from community members about what does a week look like in the life of a hybrid model. So this is a little bit of that week. So on Mondays are going to look very similar to what they currently do. Families could expect some targeted small group instruction. Most of that at the start will be digitally. We won't be bringing in a lot of kids for that targeted instruction to start, partially because of the transportation requirements to be able to do that on a Monday and set up routes for that. Parents and family supports could be prearranged by the teacher, just like right now. Teachers can reach out to families that need extra support on Mondays. And then there will be PE and music asynchronous activities for families to participate with their students on Monday. On Tuesday, let's say this is for a student and this is a Tuesday, Thursday student. And so this is what her schedule would look like. Let's say she's a first grader at Sweigel. So she would come to school, she would get her breakfast like Mr. Wolf discussed. We'd take attendance, we'd do some social emotional learning. We'd always concentrate on reading and writing because we know that's an essential skill for our youngest learners. There would be recess breaks throughout the day and movement breaks built in throughout the day. So kids can move, they can do brain breaks, they can do brain gym activities in the classroom. There can be movement throughout the day. I think we have this vision of a 5 or 6 year old sitting in her desk for 5 hours straight. And that's not what's gonna actually happen. And then we would have some language development. We would have lunch and recess. And then we would have art and science or health, kind of in a, depending on what the teacher wants to teach during that time. And then there will be some time devoted at the very end of the day to prepare for at-home learning, because the next day, she's going to be at home all day. So the next day, the student would engage in some social emotional activities. The student will have a PE lesson or a music lesson or both. There could be interventions for students who need extra support. All of PE, music, and the interventions could be synchronous. And so there could be a time, let's say this student says that she needs to log in at 8:30 to meet her PE teacher for an activity. She stays on at 9:15. She gets a music lesson at that time. And then she stays on at 10:30 to be able to get a reading intervention because she needs a little leg up to be able to get back on grade level for her reading. There'll also be time throughout her day to be able to complete homework that her teacher assigned from yesterday. So we're hoping that this model of teachers starting kids in the work and then they can take it home and work will be able to advance learning when she comes back to school on Thursday. So she'll be back in, she'll go through her regular day, teacher will prepare for the off day at home, and then she goes back on Friday and goes through that same sequence again. So this is just a little snapshot for our community and for our parents of an A-day, B-day schedule and the way it would impact for one elementary learner. And then finally, we've gotten questions about, well, what happens if I want my student to remain in remote learning? I don't want to send my student, even though my school is going back to hybrid, I don't want to send my student. So it's important to note that we did have a transfer window in November and December for families that wanted to transfer to EDGE or to CDL. And we made it really clear at that time that if you are 100% sure that you don't want your student to come back in person, this is an opportunity to do that. And we did have families take us up on that. So we had a lot of families that had questions about this that have already transferred one way or the other. If a family requests to remain in remote learning, that family should contact their resident school administrator. So where you're currently attending school as a CDL student, contact the administrator from that school. The building administrator will discuss options with you, answer any questions that you might have about safety protocols. And if you are for sure that you do want to transfer from CDL, that you'll fill out this request to stay in remote learning form. So that then we will be able to gather those forms centrally, and then we'll place students in a remote learning classroom, either with an EDGE teacher or with a district assigned teacher. So this is a subset of students who don't want to come back in hybrid, who we will continue their learning digitally in a remote format. I think it's important for parents, though, to realize most likely you will not have your current teacher, because your current teacher will most likely be teaching in the hybrid model, depending on when they start. But by spring break, all of our elementary staff that are in our schools will be teaching in the hybrid model. So students would begin in their new classrooms when their grade level transitions to hybrid. So it would either be the 2nd, the 9th, or the 16th, depending on which grade your student is in.
Then the questions have come up, why not just transfer every student to EDGE? which in a perfect world, but we really have staffed in a certain way. At the semester transition, we did leave some additional staff, but we just don't quite know yet the size, the numbers of students that will want to remain in CDL, especially when they understand that they won't get to stay with their teacher. So that's why we're going to manage it centrally and try to be sure that we distribute class size carefully across the organization as we know the numbers.
Dr. Udosinata, I think you're up.
Excellent. Good evening, Chair Chandra-Giri, Superintendent Perry, directors of the board. I'm going to give you some updates today on what we're doing with the secondary, especially with regards to limited in-person instruction and our hybrid model, as well as provide some updates on OSAA happenings, as well as music updates too. So when we last met in January, and when we last provided a report in January, we communicated that we were going to focus on bringing our younger grades back into school first, but we're going to expand limited in-person instruction. And if you recall, we were really ramping up limited in-person instruction until we had to put a pause on it in November. And then we had to scale way back. And for instance, at a school like McNary, they went from having ramping up to almost having 700 to 800 students coming in for limited in-person instructional opportunities, to scaling back to less than 10%, right? And they have about 2,000 students in their school. So we really had to put a halt to that. In the second to last week, though, in the last week of Q2, we started ramping up limited in-person instruction again for our high school students. And so I'm going to be backwards a little bit here, but on our bottom bullet, you'll see that we started about 1,500 students, which is an average of about 200 students per school, give or take. So again, we started scaling back up. And what our goal is to do is to really expand it to where every student will have an opportunity to have in-person instruction if they want it. And that's also being able to provide transportation to them too. So in terms of our high school plan and how things are going with our limited in-person instruction, we're really prioritizing targeted student groups. We're starting with, for instance, our self-contained programs, our learning resource centers, or what we call our LRCs for SPED, English language learners. We're targeting students who have would benefit from having in-person instruction, and who building leaders in the district has identified as struggling in CDL for one reason or another. We are also in third quarter going to expand our limited in-person by doing a senior blitz, right? So bringing in seniors who are on the cusp of graduating, but need a little bit of additional support to get across the finish line. And then we're really pleased to share that we will be offering limited in-person instruction opportunities for our visual and performing arts, depending on the program. We're going to be starting with music. And then also our CTEC programming, especially our hands-on programs at CTEC, construction, for instance. I think cosmetology too, I've already started the process of bringing students in for limited in-person instructional opportunities. And so we're really pleased that we're able to bring students in as it's a precursor for what may happen when we launch into a hybrid model or an in-person instruction model and transition away possibly from CDL. So just to give a couple of examples of what's happening at high schools, McNary, for instance, they're planning on serving 325 kids this week, and they're doing, they did a senior blitz or a Saturday school, and in their Saturday school, they invited 116 students and 96 showed up for limited in-person instruction. So you can see that our students are eager to get in and get those in-person supports. If you look at McKay, they're consistently bringing in high numbers of students, again, prioritizing those focus groups that I discussed a minute ago. And they have about 350 students that I think they plan to bring in this week for limited in-person. Edge is doing limited in-person instruction. They're bringing in a handful of students for ELPA assessment testing. So Our building leaders, I just want to give kudos to them for their creativity that they're bringing to limited in person. As you can see, I focused on high school a little bit here, more than the middle school. The middle school is also ramping up their limited in-person instruction. And the intention is to double or triple the number of students that we have that we're giving limited in-person opportunities to, with the goal of all students having an opportunity by Q4. Okay, so I know a lot of our conversation for the last month has been about how we're bringing back our elementary students. So we do have a plan to bring back secondary students, and I want to give kudos to our secondary team. Over the last couple of weeks, they've been really trying to think outside the box to anticipate potential constraints and how we could adjust or propose different models that can still help to bring students in school and provide supports that our students to create a more robust educational experience for our students. So one example of that is our director of high school, Larry Ramirez, has been working with a lot of innovative leaders from the other districts to pick their brains about what's happening. I think those groups have met a couple of times to discuss what's happening and how we can be creative about bringing secondary in and high school in. We've also been working very closely with a handful of our building leaders to evaluate our scheduling, the new RSSL guidance, look at the layout of our schools and determine what we can do to bring students in given the constraints of the guidance. And so I have two models, and they're potential models, so they're not set in stone. We still have some logistics to iron out before we could really finalize our schedule. But here are two potential models that we have that I'd like to share with you for bringing high school or secondary students, as middle and high school, back to school. One is the model that we've shared with you over the course earlier in August, as we really started planning for bringing students back, and it's just that hybrid AB model. So an example of that would be group one would come in, and we were calling those cohorts, but just for the sake of not commingling the way we're using the term cohorts, group one, which would be half the school, would come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they would receive what are currently their CDL classes. So their standard classes or core classes, they would get in person. And then group two would come on Wednesday, Friday, with us maintaining student support days on Mondays. And on the off days, students would continue to engage in applied learning. So they would do that remotely from home. And we're really hoping to with students coming in person, that they will have a little bit more guidance and structure around what their applied learning days will look like, even as they're at home. So I want to go over the pros and cons of this model first. The pros are that we have a gradual reintroduction to school. Given that our students have been out of school for a week, we know that it's going to potentially be take some getting used to being back in the school environment. So that could be a benefit for being back in school a couple of days a week instead of all day for 5 days straight. It's a familiar instructional model in terms of being in the classroom, receiving your direct instruction from a teacher, being amongst classmates and peers. It's an opportunity for in-person care and connection, which is something that we know is very critical in re-entry and bringing students back to school. It's an opportunity for social interaction and with both teachers and peers, and we know that our students are starved for that. So that is the benefits of this model. Now, the cons, or the challenges really, is the logistical constraints. So I know that some parents might think, or some people who are watching might think, why not just bring all students in at once at the same time? And the reality is that for a high school schedule, there's a lot of logistical constraints. And I'll talk a little bit in a couple slides from now, the difference between a high school, bringing students back in high school and the complexities of that versus the elementary school. Well, they're complex, but right now for the high school, there's some logistical constraints around capacity. Remember, we have that 35 square foot rule per classroom, which means we could really only bring about somewhere on average, maybe 15 kids into a classroom. and then we'd have to be creative if we had more than that. Scheduling, remember kids are going back and forth from one class to another instead of staying in a house cohort under this hybrid model. Transportation, and we know that our transportation is going to be stressed, and so it takes us a little bit longer to make sure that we've ironed out all the kinks for transportation. So that's the challenge that we're looking at. And then we also know that some students and families are just eager to get kids back full time. And so this does bring students back twice a week instead of 5 days a week or 4 days a week. Now, our second and creative model, and this is, again, we really took our secondary team to task and asked them to think outside the box. In the case that this model right here, in the case that we had challenges of mobilizing this by April 13th, which is the beginning of quarter 4. So it's an applied learning model, in-person applied learning model. I actually refer to it as a flipped model. That's just the educational term. And what would happen is we'd still have group 1, group 2, which represents halves of schools. And it would be Tuesday, Thursday, and then Wednesday, Friday group. And one group would do applied learning in person. And the other group would do CDL at home the way that they've been doing it this year. So there's some consistency with that CDL process, but instead on their day off or their day away from CDL, students would be going to school. And this would be open to all students. And so you can see it's reversed for group 2. So on Tuesday, Thursday, they do CDL. Wednesday, Friday, they do applied learning at school. And so here's just a description of what would be happening on those applied learning days. So again, students will come to school and it's open invitation, meaning all students would have the invitation to attend, and it would be a structured schedule as well of who's attending and where they would be. But there's a variety where it's a little bit more flexible is what the students would be doing when they arrive to their applied learning day. There'd be opportunities for what we call tier 1, or like our tier 1 means almost all of our students. So, or just your core coursework. So a place for students to engage with their coursework in a structured environment. There'd be opportunities for intervention, right? Which is our tier 2, tier 3 academic supports. So this is all MTSS language. There would be academic and social emotional supports on site, which we think is important, again, in getting students reacclimated and serving all their needs and looking at the whole student. And then there would, of course, be credit recovery opportunities for students who perhaps didn't pass a course or fell behind from quarter 1 through quarter 3. And the thing that we're really excited about is this opportunity for enrichment and engagement. And so creating opportunities for students to access CTE in person, art, music, PE, if possible, clubs. And so we really think that's a carrot that would be enticing to students. And so the pros and cons of this applied learning day, the pro would be students get 4 days of engagement. So the day that they're at home during the CDL, they're engaging with their coursework remotely. So it's a blend, right? And then the other 2 days, we know there's a variance of what the student experience is, but students would have that opportunity and parents would have that option to have our students attend school. It's an opportunity for care and connection. It's increased supports on applied learning days. And so if a student encounters a challenge or gets hung up on a math problem per se, there will be somebody on site that can talk a student through it and walk them through it in person. So it really reduces the amount of frustration I think some of our students feel when they're online and can't really get through a problem. And of course, another pro is if there is an outbreak, there's still consistency in that CDL model should we have to close down parts or reduce the amount of limited in person we're providing on those applied learning days should there be an outbreak. And the cons are the challenges that or criticisms might be that attendance is expected. When we call students right now for limited in person, we tell them that they really need to be there. And we have a pretty good turnout when we do that. But it's not required the same way that in terms of how attendance is being taken because it's an applied learning day, not a class that's on the records. There are some transportation constraints, and I know that our transportation department right now is running the models to see what we're capable of doing with this. Remember, this is a new learning model, so it wasn't something that they were able to prepare for in August. So there could be potential transportation constraints, but we're trying to work through that. And it's not clear to some of us if this will be a substitute for your standard in-person instruction, but we do think it is an upgrade from what our applied learning days look like right now. So considerations for secondary. I mentioned a moment ago that I was going to talk about why it's a little bit different, and I actually touched on a lot of these points, so I will go through a little bit quickly. When the RSSL came out, the Ready School Safe Learners Guidance came out on January 19th, we were hoping that there would be a little bit more flexibility with our spacing and our cohorts. But as it stands right now, our cohorts are cohorts of 100, and our spacing is limited into 35 students per square foot, right? So in terms of cohorts, with elementary, it's a little bit more natural. They have natural cohorts that are a little bit more practical in terms of management because they're with a teacher all day, mostly the same students all day. Whereas we know that there's a lot of movement with the secondary schedule going from period 1, 2, 3 through 5 or 6, right? And so that creates some stress on the master's schedule. And especially with the high school, we know that a lot of the scheduling is contingent on, it's critical because it might have graduation implications in the long run, right? Again, limited space. So we're trying to work through or come up with creative solutions to if we reach capacity in a number of buildings. Remember, our buildings were designed with the idea that you can fit 35 kids in one space. But given this 35 square foot restriction, that's going to greatly reduce the amount of students that we can house, which is why we're doing that split with the 8A, B-Day, because we anticipated that. Transportation, again, we're just trying to transport more students within a building. And so and then we're also trying to do that while we're bringing back our elementary kids in this new model. And again, it's something that our transportation department, and they're the best, they're really working on finding models that will make it work, but that's why it's a little bit slower. And again, access to some classes. And so we know that in the secondary, that there's some classes where we don't quite have guidance yet. And that's the performing arts, for instance. We're waiting for ODE to update guidance on drama and bringing students back, and also some of our musical programs as well. And so those will be impacted in the secondary hybrid model. But our next steps right here is to continue to work closely with our building leaders, our secondary leadership, and really trying to and of course our operations. And our goal is to finalize a model as soon as we can and get communication out to the board and to families as well. So
I'm just going to add one thing on that too.
Yeah.
If we can figure out operationally that either model works, then we have the ability to go out and collect feedback on it.
Right.
And what are the pros and cons of a model? But unless we know operationally it can work, there's no reason to go out and collect models or feedback on it. So that's the thing we're straddling with this, is how do you get a model that you operationally can implement? Because if you think about the transportation system alone, the way we are transporting kids is different than we've ever transported them before with the A, B, D, and all of that. So, all right,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really important that you mentioned that. And I'll just say that Dave Hughes, you think about all the buildings that we have, and Dave Hughes in our facilities, our facilities lead is doing a great job at trying to really paint the picture of what we're able to do at each different facility. Remember, especially for our high schools and middle schools, they were built at different times. They're configured differently. Some are under construction. And so there's a lot of moving parts in terms of bringing students back. Okay, so let's talk about athletics. And again, athletics is always changing, and we have some hope that we're gonna be able to get students on the field of competition sometime soon. And so, just as a refresher, when we received the RSSL guidance in January, we learned that athletics was still under the ODE guidance in terms of county metrics. And so, what that did is it didn't allow us to allow our full contact sports to schedule their season as soon as we wanted them to. But we do have a season 2 underway, and we're excited to share that our soccer and cross country will be beginning in February 22nd, with contests slated to begin March 1st. So we're excited for those athletes to have the opportunity to finally get a chance to compete. They've been engaging in conditioning since the fall, and so that's exciting for them. Volleyball is prohibited if a county is an extreme risk, and as it stands right now, we're starting to drop out of that extreme risk mode or space in Marion County. So we're hopeful that we may get the green light or approval to start volleyball sooner than we thought we would a week or two ago. For districts that are in the extreme risk category, however, we can request a change of season request form. And what that does is it allows our district, our school, our league to shift the season to a later date so as to give greater opportunity to have an uninterrupted season with more opportunities to compete against other schools. And so that's something that our league athletic directors could exercise if we found that it would create greater opportunities for our volleyball programs. As far as football goes, right now our football is able to start non-contact conditioning practice, right? And so what that means is they could go do strength and conditioning, they can engage in drills. They still have to maintain the physical distancing guidelines, and they can't engage in full contact just yet. It's still prohibited. Now, Peter Weber, who's the executive director from the OSAA, is doing a lot of advocacy work to try to create, get more leniency to give our football programs the ability to engage in full contact. But in the meantime, the OSAA board has adopted a few alternatives to ensure that students might have some way to engage in the sport of football. So examples are 7-on-7, flag football, a virtual lineman challenge, or a virtual combine. But do know that the OSAA is anticipating potential changes to guidance within the next few days. For Salem-Keizer Public Schools, we are having an athletic director meeting on Wednesday to discuss how all the changes and to discuss what our next steps could be. And there will also be a webinar from the OSAA, and we're hopeful that they're scheduling that webinar because there's going to be updated guidances. And so we have our eyes set on the OSAA Twitter feed. We are on their websites. We are making sure that we are staying up to date, and we have our fingers crossed that students our athletes will be able to participate in athletics when they can do so safely. So let me just wrap up right here with an update on music, really just music, not music and athletics. We just covered that, and then go over next steps for our secondary. So I'm pleased to share that we're finalizing plans to bring our string and orchestra programs back in with band. It's percussion only. They'll begin operating under limited in-person instruction. Our orchestra and percussion will begin on Mondays and after school. And it depends on the school, what their schedule will be. And then also, I mentioned this just a moment ago, ODE removed our guidance for our visual and performing arts. And so what that means is those programs are on a pause until we're able to get guidance on what the safety protocols are in order for us to have a full band and choir. And so we hope to get guidance soon. And I know that Stephen Lytle is just waiting, and he is doing everything he can. Believe me, he's doing everything he can to advocate for our programs. And he will be the first to let us know when we learn something new. All right, and then finally, in terms of our elementary orchestra and choir began virtually last week. And the plan as of now is for those programs to remain virtually as we move back to in-person. Although those programs may start providing limited in-person instruction on those student support Mondays as well. So that's it for music and athletics. Our next steps in terms of our hybrid planning for our secondary is to continue doing the operational diagnostics and working with our leadership teams to adjust depending on what the constraints are. And so we're going to continue to plan the hybrid implementation at the secondary level. Again, the main goal is to elevate student learning opportunities, and that's to give students opportunities to come to their school and have limited in-person instruction one way or another, whether that's through our ramping up of LIPI in third quarter, or it's an applied learning day that we could perhaps adopt. We want kids to have in-person instruction opportunities. We're going to continue to prioritize getting our seniors across the finish line. We want to keep our parents looped in. I'm talking to parents consistently, and I'm getting feedback, and it's giving me information on things that we need to be sharing with parents. And so we'll be working with our communication teams on that, as well as our building principals. And we're going to continue with safety upgrades and facility upgrades like COO Wolf shared earlier today. And then staff, we know that staff training and professional development is paramount so that we can confidently bring our educators back and confidently bring our students back and mitigate the opportunities for a COVID outbreak. So that's something that that I know that Chris Baldridge and our safety at risk team is working hard on as well. And I think that's it. Chair Chandragiri, questions?
Yeah, I think we'll follow the same format, so we can kind of go around and one question that way. And we'll start with Director Leopold. And the way I see the screen, Director Leopold, you have a question.
Not right now. I mean, there's going to be a million questions, but there's nothing in stone yet for the secondary learning. And so until we know a little bit more, I think I want to hold off so that we can be more.
Thank you. Director Hine.
Yes, thank you. So you gave us an example of what elementary week would look like. For high school, though, you said that attendance is expected but not required for the days that the student is at home. And I was curious what kind of classes they're having on those days that we would not require their attendance as if they were in school.
Superintendent Perry, would you like me to answer that?
Yeah, thank you.
So, so these, there's a lot of, I'm trying to put this into context for you, Director Hyen. So think of the applied learning days almost as if it's almost like an after school program that has several different programs and structures where students can attend. And so a student might come in for an applied learning day knowing that they're going to spend a couple of hours with some core instruction in the core, working on the core instruction. Maybe you might go to some intervention and then end the day doing something engaging. And because there's not a grade associated with that, and it's not a standard class that's logged, it's not required for attendance the same way that our classes are for Oregon Department of Education guidelines and attendance requirements.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Director Goss, do you have a question? No. Director Kylo. I had to unmute.
I do. My question is for both Craig and Eton. And the question is, what are the teacher responsibilities on the off days? I saw a student schedule, but I didn't see what a teacher schedule looked like. And that is troubling to me. So I know we're working on an MOU tonight, but so can you, either of you, both of you, tell me what a teacher schedule looks like on those, during what their week schedule would look like? I get a Monday, but I don't know Tuesday through Friday.
So I'll let Craig start on elementary, and then I don't know if we have enough specificity yet on the teacher schedule for one of the secondary schedules, but go ahead, Craig.
So thank you for that, Director Kylo. So the elementary day is a 5-hour day, and this is what the MOU was agreed to working with SKEA. And so what that will look like for the teachers on the day that they're teaching, they will be instructing their in-person classes, which is half of their classes in person on, let's say, a Tuesday. They'll repeat that lesson on a Wednesday. Then they'll have a new lesson on Thursday, repeat that lesson to the second group of kids on Friday. When the kids are at home, and so they're not in person in front of that teacher, they will have lessons from the PE and music teachers who will be delivering all of their coursework on the at-home learning day. They'll also be finishing work that is assigned when they're in person with the teacher, but the teacher won't be directly monitoring that work because she will be teaching, or he would be teaching, the new cohort,
right,
while that day is going on. So
who are they working with?
What's that?
So who are they working with at that time?
On their at-home day, they'll be working with the PE teacher, the music teacher, right, possibly some classified people if they need extra intervention support. Counselors as well will be doing support groups around SEL touch points on that day. And then they'll be completing asynchronous applied learning activities similar to what we have now.
Okay.
Director Blasi, do you have a question?
And just real quick for the secondary, sorry, and I'll be quick. So if we went under the blocked CDL, the hybrid model that we've been sharing all year long, the teacher schedules will look the same as they are now. So teachers will be teaching and instructing both days and consistent with the schedule that they have now. Now, we can be our schedulers right now are looking at very creative ways to make it a possibility to work to adjust the student cohorting so that there might be more availability for a teacher during the applied learning days, but we don't have those details worked out just yet.
So that was my question: is who's working with the students on those days, their applied learning day?
Yep. There would be staff at the building, and those staff would be IAs and licensed teachers as well, and so and it depends on what that space looks like. So, for instance, if we have a cafeteria at Parish that's able to house students for core study time, there doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of licensed staff in there because it's an applied learning day and it's not instruction. It's not direct instruction for teaching. And so we can have an IA in there supporting, whereas at the same time, and here's where we don't have the specificity that Superintendent Perry spoke of, is to what extent can we manage the schedules so that we can have our teachers available to support kids and what their capacity might be that day.
And I think the important thing is on the secondary side is we figure out what are the operational challenges, what are the, if both can work, what are the best, what's the best schedule, and then really work to be sure that we're thinking carefully through the teacher lens, which we've got really strong collaboration with SKEA to bring teacher teams together when we get to that place, which is exactly what happened with elementary. And that happened before we could communicate schedules to parents, because we had to really think about what does the day look like and how is it doable for our educators as well.
And my corollary question is, have we actually done the study to make sure that we can fit, that our classes will hold 15 kids with 35, 36?
We're finalizing that.
Shifts.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, I think having been in those classrooms, I think that's an optimistic look.
That's what we're worried about. We've done some initial, we have some initial planning assumptions, but we're now going out classroom by classroom to figure that out. And you've identified the exact issue at secondary, where the elementary classrooms are just a little easier set up for this hybrid model and the 35 square feet.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Blasi, do you have a question?
Thank you. Ethan, you mentioned needed interventions. How do we know right now when kids are coming back what those needed interventions are? Because one of the things I'm hearing is just, as everyone is, just the struggles with where kids are right now and feeling as though they're significantly behind. Is there going to be some time allowed to try to figure out what interventions are actually needed and how to proceed? Because it sounds like we're just going to continue to roll right into lessons, and but how are they going to be able to stop and kind of assess and regroup?
No, yeah, Director Blasi, that's a good question. So here's just 3 real quick bullet responses. One is we'll use our multi-tiered system support, so our MTSS model, to identify students who need intervention, and that's what we've always used. We'll continue to use data teams to analyze student work, to analyze what student needs are, which are already established and structured. And importantly, our quarter 2 just ended, so now we have data from our first quarter, our second quarter, and we're continuing to monitor our student progress formatively throughout those quarters. And so you'll find when we do our KPI report that our building leaders have systems in place to identify what student needs are. We're also maximizing a lot of our staffing that we receive from our SIA in terms of our community outreach specialists to make sure we're touching base with students to see what their social emotional needs are in addition to what their academic needs are.
Thank you very much. Advisor Mabinton, do you have a question?
My question was the same as Director Blasi, and also I'm interested to see how this plays out. I know we don't have a lot of information on secondary, but elementary looks pretty good. I'm excited to see how that plays out coming up.
All right. Thank you. Vice Chair Bethel, do you have?
I do, thank you. So you mentioned the start of the 4th quarter is April 13th, and I understand that you're working through these 2 potential options, but you didn't really talk about dates. And I think it's important to try to share with the community what your plan is as far as communication with not just the models, but when you're going to bring these students back, regardless of which one is chosen. So what's that process look like between now and the 13th of April?
Yeah, sorry, I missed something really important that you said. You said I didn't talk about, and then I couldn't hear.
I only heard you talk about or state the April 13th was the start of the 4th quarter. I didn't hear, and maybe I missed it because my connection is really poor, the delivery on between now and then. What's the communication plan? When do we want these kids back? Regardless of the model, parents are very eager to know, what the process is. And I feel like we're not really telling them a whole lot other than the start of the 4th quarter is the April 13th date, which, okay.
No, I apologize for moving through that information too quickly. We're going to engage in the same type of communication process that we did with the elementary families last month. And so we will have information videos about what the models look like, how to get ready for bringing students back for hybrid. At the same time, remember, we're ramping up our limited in-person, and we're really trying to expand it, right? So and that's going to look different at CTEC as it does at Sprague, Northwest, or North, South, West Salem, et cetera. So And you make a really good point in that we need to ramp up our communication for what we're doing between now and April 13th, because we do really plan to provide more supports to students. So I appreciate that feedback, Danielle.
Our initial planning.
Director Bethel.
Sorry. Our initial planning with the comms team that we were looking at the third week of February, which is, I think, next week, as far as beginning to talk about it with our secondary families. And Sylvia's team has been meeting with the secondary team. And the hard part is not clearly having the model. One of the things we want to really push in our community is the issue of riders registration for transportation, because one of the huge inhibitors in all of this is transportation, not because we don't want to, but it's a real bus challenge, driver challenge when you have to really expand the routes. So what we're trying to think about is how do we really push to say, if you can take your student, which is never our position, if you can take your student to school, take your student to school, because every bus seat we save helps us get further in the organization in order to really have a viable option at the secondary. One real example is CTEC is really thinking through how they can bring back their seniors. Principal Rhodes has a really good model for how to do it safely. But the operational challenge is if we let seniors at CTEC go and we transport them, now we're running a bus route into every area of the community for a few kids at the expense of other kids who might really need. So again, we're trying to think about, as we communicate to those seniors, how many really need a ride? How many could we give a bus pass to? If we can take it down to 1 or 2, that's different than if you need 50 kids from all over. So we're trying to push the system that way. And then the other thing at CTEC is we've set that up as our distribution for meals. So what are the operational implications of that as well? So that's kind of how we're working through it. And really that push around for our elementary families, if you need a ride to school on a bus, sign up for riders registration, because that information then feeds into our routing system software, so we can effectively and efficiently route the route buses.
Did I miss anybody? Director Hine, did you ask your question?
Yes, thank you. I already did. Hopefully we're going to be taking a break though.
Yeah, we're going to take a break. That's what I was going to say. I just want to throw a question, and you don't have to answer now, but sometimes if you can, when kids start coming back with this long break from school, there's a lot of mental health surge, suicidal thoughts and struggles and emotional problems. I anticipate there'll be a huge surge as we come. The question is, we have designed one day or the other day for counseling. How are we going to plan for this surge in mental health needs and suicidal needs? Because you really cannot plan the crisis on the day when we are supposed to be there. So what kind of referral sources we need, what kind of connections we need with the county community in order to take care of that surge that we will anticipate, both for students coming back and probably the faculty also will probably need a lot of help. Just a thought. I don't think we will have time to answer that, but somewhere in the next presentation. We'll take about 5 minutes break if that's okay with everybody. Yeah, so thank you, Superintendent Perry, for that nice report. Now we're going to go to the public comment section. To provide an earlier opportunity for the public comment, the board has designated 1 hour to hear from the public, first on agenda items, and immediately followed by non-agenda items, all in 1 hour, one time. Written and video public comments not heard in the meeting will be posted on the website and provided to the board members following the meeting. Each member is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. An additional 3 minutes is allowed for translation to English if needed. Please state your first and last name and your place of residence for the record. I'm going to call on Ms. McDaniel, and the communication teams to facilitate the public comment process. Ms. McDaniel, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, for a minute there, I thought my camera was going off. Crazy day for technical problems. Thank you, Chair Chandra-Giri, Superintendent Perry, Board Directors. Erin, are we on for the first caller for agenda items?
Yes, yeah. And yeah, Jordan's helping out tonight. So.
Oh, hi, Jordan.
Hello, everybody. Yes, our first caller is Julissa. Julissa, you may unmute and go ahead. *6 to unmute, if that will help. Julissa, are you there? Okay, we will go to our second caller tonight, Louis. Louis, can you unmute? And you may go ahead, please. Luis?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
to the
please,
school board and community members who are listening, I am calling in to support resolution number 2020-21-3 to change school board elections from at-will elections to by-zone elections. During the last school board meeting, there was concerns that more data was needed to continue with this proposal. Asking for more data, however, is racist coded language from white supremacists because they know that this issue is real. They know that this issue is affecting our communities, and they just want to lengthen the conversation and ignore it instead of taking direct action on issues that directly affect us. This is something only cowards do, because even if the school board had all the answers in the world, they still choose to live in a world of racism and white supremacy that is fueled in their conservative and oppressive policies that they believe in. This resolution has stated that financial and racial barriers are issues that affect the structure of school board elections. You don't need data for this because you know this issue is real and that it's affecting our communities. In the last school board meeting, there were school board members who stated that finances are issues in running for school board elections. And if you stop to take a look at each and every one of yourselves, there is no diversity on this board. There are only racist white people and sellout people of color that don't represent our communities. The school board and superintendent don't represent our students because at the end of the day, they don't care about us. If you look at the structure of the school board, all of you are selfish, conservative white people. You only care about yourselves, and we have never had real leaders who represent us in the school board. Sure, you might be a person of color, sure, you might be an immigrant, but that doesn't mean you represent us. I'm a person of color and an immigrant myself, and with my whole heart, I can say that Satya is no different than the racist white supremacist that he protects. He will never represent us because he yearns so much to be the puppet for white supremacy. If you really care about the equity lens and practicing it, then do the right thing and move forward to accept this resolution. Furthermore, recognize the obstacles hindering electing a diverse representation of leaders, and recognize that all of you are uplifting racism and organized white supremacy that is directly hurting the students in the district that you make decisions over. Remove systemic barriers to voting and change elections from by-hold to by-zone elections. We need actual progressive leaders who can work on issues such as closing the opportunity gap and removing SRAs from our school. We need school board members who aren't like Paul Kylo and who do not do blackface during school board meetings. We need school board members who are not like Satya and who don't propose oppressive policies that try to silence us. We need school board members who are not like Marty and who are not part of domestic terrorist organizations and gangs such as the 3%ers. We need school board members who are not like Daniel Bethel, who are afraid of black and brown youth while they're running for county commissioner. We need school board members who are not like Kathy, who are classist and prefer buying a Mercedes than feeding low-income black and brown students. And lastly, we need a superintendent who is not like Christy and who doesn't try to cover up racism of West Salem's racist principal or doesn't try to open up schools during the global pandemic. Over the entirety of the school board, it is obvious that all of you are ill-equipped, oppressive white supremacists who should not, and I can't highlight this enough, All of you should never, ever be in the positions that you are in and in making decisions over the students that you serve. Do the right thing and move forward with passing this voting proposition that can work towards equitable systemic change. We need this proposition passed, and we need this proposition passed now.
Thank you. Jordan, who is the next caller, please?
Yes, our next caller is Sandra.
Sandra, go ahead, please.
Sandra, please unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please, Sandra. Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to ask you, Board Chair Satya Chandragiri, if you will be ensuring that there's 3 youth that submitted their testimonies via video, and they shared some concerns with me because on the last school board meeting, they didn't get to testify, and one of these youth in particular has something very important to present to the community about their experience with the school-to-prison pipeline. So I would like to request that you actually make sure that these videos are played. Is this going to happen? That was a question. So is this going to happen today? Hello?
Sandra, you go ahead and finish your testimony. I won't be able to answer your question right at this time during your testimony. This is your time. You go ahead and we will be find a way to answer your question towards the end.
All right. Well, I would like to know if that's going to happen. Well, I guess I can go on with what I have to say. First of all, as you all may know, I'm not a district employee, but I am a person who works in this community every single day. And I serve the students most underrepresented in the school district. I get to do the work that the school district fails to do every day. And it is necessary that you listen to what I have to say today, because this institution has done nothing to ensure that our Black and Brown students feel safe and heard. So first and foremost, you have failed to listen to the pleas of our students and parents and community leaders to address the school-to-prison pipeline. You have heard this for years. I remember the first time, one of the first times I was there with students was in 2017, much before some of you were elected on the school board. So these students have been here longer than you, yet they're still continuing to be ignored whenever they are telling the stories, when they are here to testify. Like today, for example, they submitted videos and they probably won't be played. And this is, unfair, because that means that you are not only failing to listen, but you are blocking their testimonies from being heard. And so this is also supporting the superintendent's lack of decision to remove SROs from the school district. And so one of the things we've been asking is to divest from funds that go into SROs to go directly into the education of Black and Brown students. These have been very specific asks, and you have continued to ignore them. So here I am to ask again, to fund school resource officers and put in place a path to fund the school to college and or school to career pipeline. Secondly, I urge you to vote yes on Resolution 2021/3, which would change the school board elections by zone. This is the most minimal institutional change that the school board can do and has the power to do. Changing the school board elections by zone would give the community the opportunity for better and more equitable leadership in Salem-Keizer. Because as a reminder, those of you who stand here today and who are asked to resign on your own terms due to your bad and racist behavior and or affiliation still remain. So do the responsible thing today and vote yes, so that we can elect leaders who are anti-racist and not white supremacists. After approving this action item, make sure that the communities most impacted have a say and a place to implement this. Stop ignoring us. Stop kicking us out of the process. Lastly, This week, our youth leaders published a community poll to know where educators, parents, students, and community members stand on the issue of reopening schools. Today, we heard the presentation by the administration, and while it was very informative, it also tells us that they have failed to get community input and have transparency for their educators, for the students, and community. The reason we decided to do this, again, was because there hasn't been any transparency or leadership. So I will not share the results that we got today because we did get a lot of responses in only one day. But I can tell you that right now, what it seems like is that the district is failing to protect the health of this community, and you're also failing at informing the community. You are failing at using the equity lens and being anti-racist when it comes to reopening schools. So I need to remind you, be careful with what you decide to do. There was a case study that was shown today around North Carolina. Well, I found another case study in the state of Indiana where the schools were reopened, and now they saw, this was published in February 8th, they saw a new cases of 1,500 people, and this was all students and educators. In only one school district where it only has 10,000 students, they had an infection rate of 291 students and around 45 staff and educators. Imagine in our school district where we have 42,000 students. So I want you to think about the decisions you're making and as the board, what you're supporting and how you're advocating for this community to ensure that our school district is doing the right thing when it comes to reopening schools and providing the resources that the students need at every level. So this is a reminder that our Black and Brown communities, our immigrant communities, and our working class communities are disproportionately being killed by the virus. Educators being vaccinated will not stop the virus from affecting parents, students, and the wider community. So think before you act. And remember that during this entire pandemic, we have been fighting racism, and we have to continue doing so because you have failed at making the right decisions. So I hope that today you actually listen to those testimonies that you might, again, push back and put on your website and ignore, and actually play them before any other testimony, because these are students that have been waiting to be listened to for years. So I hope that you actually listen to them, and I hope you, Director Chandragiri, you actually answer my question now. Will you play those videos? Thank you.
Jordan, who is our next caller, please?
Yes, we will try and go back to Ulissa. Are you able to unmute?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, it's Julissa. That's how you pronounce my name. So anyways, my name is Julissa Rodriguez, and I'm an educator in the district. And I'll be speaking on the unsafe return plans to the school buildings. So when the district first announced the return plans last week, it felt in both the video and the graphic that was released to inform parents of their rights and options to stay in virtual learning. Why would the district not release both pieces of information? Leaving it up to the individual schools to possibly communicate to families is always a bad idea, and is especially not using the equity lens. Something else that was left out of today's presentation is that if there are enough families in the same grade level and in the same school, the home school will have to provide the CDL instruction. If not, then the students would go to EDGE. Simply stating, like that was stated in the presentation, that students will most likely not stay in their home school without telling families why is creating a district desired response from parents, because we really don't know how many parents want to stay in CDL, right? Since they were never surveyed. Third, this is about the ELBA test that English language learners take every year. The state released special opt-out forms for the ELBA test that can be found on the ODE website. Yet, parents are not being informed that they could opt out of this test, so they don't know that they don't have to put their child at risk since it has to be in person. And this is also, again, not using the equity lens, since the majority of students who are taking the ELBA are English language learners and Latino students. Continuing, I understand that there are families, students, and some teachers who feel safe to go back into in-person. And there's actually one thing I do agree with them on, and that's the mental health of youth. Isolation is bad for mental health of youth. Being locked up all day is bad for the mental development of the adolescent brain. So when I expect this board agrees to the opening up schools plans, and when those families and staff who are pushing to return also, I fully expect them and this board to join the fight to remove the SROs from schools, as they are a direct contribution to locking up and isolating youth, creating poor mental health and poor development of the adolescent brains via the school to prison pipeline, which is more intense, more damaging, and longer timeframes than the COVID-19 lockdown has been. And we're celebrating the resilience of Black histories and Black people, right? How about any systemically racist programs and systems that force Black people to overcome? It is offensive to say, oh, hey, here's a certificate for a good job on surviving our every attempt to destroy your people. It is a slap in the face. According to a 2017 Pew Research Center and the OJJDP Youth of Color account for 28% of the U.S. population, but represent 67% of the population in residential youth offender programs. Additionally, Black youth represent 54% of the youth transferred to adult systems. We need to end the SRO program now. Moving on, please vote yes to change on the voting systems for our school board. People on this board do not represent our community, majorly because the funding and the income levels that you guys have and the sources of income you have through your connections. The majority of our community cannot raise thousands and thousands of dollars, and we need people on the board that represent our community. And how I know the majority of our community cannot raise thousands and thousands of dollars is because the majority of our students get free lunch, even though that's something that makes Kathy mad.
All right, Jordan, who's our next caller, please?
Our next caller is Cindy. Cindy, may you unmute and you may go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Cindy, go ahead.
Okay. So after listening to your presentation on schools reopening, I noticed that there was a point on there that claimed that this process was, quote, equity focused, but nothing about this process is equitable, especially when administrators and superintendents who make more than $200K and drive luxury cars are the ones making decisions for lower income communities and or Black and Brown communities as well, that have been deeply, deeply impacted by COVID on a physical, emotional, and financial level. During every school board meeting, there are white supremacists on here that state that they are, quote, a data person. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some statistics. So let's pay attention, Marty. More than 75% of children who have been killed by COVID are Black or Latinx. More than 75% of children who have been killed by COVID are Black or Latinx. More than 75% of children who have been killed by COVID are Black or Latinx. So no, you can't sit there and put on your little blazer and put on a show every time the second Tuesday of every month comes by and claim you care about our communities not only impacted by systemic racism and policing, but now obviously impacted more by the pandemic. And it's deeply disturbing how you all, 7, 8 people, I don't remember how many people are in the call right now, get to sit in your homes comfortably on a Zoom call and are talking about getting more than 42,000 students back into school, while some of our community members and their families don't even have access to health care and know someone who has passed away from COVID. This is the same school board that after 9 months have ignored public testimony and are constantly breaking your own district's, quote, equity lens guidelines with no repercussions or accountability for the violence you all are responsible for. This is the same district that shields and protects white supremacists that have done blackface, that have harassed teenagers online, that break COVID guidelines themselves, that protect racist principles and keep their removal on the down low. You are all nothing but racist and white supremacists and should not be trusted in making any decision concerning the well-being of Black and Brown students, because you have proven time and time again you do not hold their safety as a priority or as a factor in decision-making at all. I'm here to demand the end and complete abolition of the SRO contract and to demand that you reconstruct a new plan and a better plan that puts students' health first. I'm also here to support the voting change resolution that was proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jordan, who is our next caller, please?
Yes, our next caller is Ricardo. Ricardo, can you unmute? Ricardo, *6 to unmute, please.
Hello?
Ricardo, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. Hi. I called weeks ago to express my anger regarding all of the people in the school board demanding respect while at the same time disrespecting BIPOC people, disrespecting our voices, our demands, our needs. You guys decided to start opening schools without ever asking for people's opinions. Christy Perry herself says she doesn't care about parents' opinions because she already knows what they have to say. It is shameful how you guys hide yourselves behind the idea of being anti-racist and advocating for an equity lens, but your actions speak louder than words. I don't understand how you guys think you can speak for BIPOC communities while being composed of privileged white supremacists. How do you look at yourselves and genuinely believe you guys can speak for us? I've never met a white person that can relate to my situation, yet you guys believe you can. You guys are composed of white supremacists. The best thing you guys can do at this point is just to resign. The fact that white supremacists are making decisions in predominantly BIPOC school districts and schools, and yet you guys want respect. It is disgusting the privilege and entitlement that your voices spew every time you guys have a school board meeting. You guys didn't ask parents for their opinions about opening schools, disregarded BIPOC communities, which are the most affected by schools in the school to prison pipeline that is destroying young lives. You guys created a whitewash sellout student task force that is a puppeteer actions, and they're all friends with white supremacists. You guys do everything to protect your reputation and your $200,000 paycheck. Oregon has always been full of racists, and I'm not surprised this school board is full of them. I'm glad Christy Perry is enjoying his paycheck while youth are being thrown into school to prison pipelines. I'm glad you guys showed you how expendable youth lives are by creating the student task force that are just seeking college essays. And the fact that you guys did it just by doing a coin flip with a cop right next to you guys just shows that you guys do not care about equity or enforcing the anti-racist policies that you guys keep talking about. It is so gross how you guys see our future and the future of our young people as nothing more than expendable. I'm happy Christy Perry lets the school board minions talk about equity, knowing damn well she just putting a band-aid on these issues. White people need to start listening instead of acting like they care. You guys think Satya, a puppet for Christy Perry, and a person who parties during a pandemic is the people we need in the school board to advocate for our community. The person that said that she doesn't care about feeding kids during a pandemic turned white when we mentioned about the fact that we want to start electing people per zone rather than by the whole state. I support the resolution 2020-21/3, the voting proposition. And Christy Perry, what's going on with the racist principal at West that was found to be in a gang?
Jordan, who is our next caller, please?
Yes, our next caller is Rita. Rita, may you please unmute and you may go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, Rita, go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Good evening. This is Rita Glass. I'm here this evening to speak to you as a community member and a woman of color. And I'm speaking on resolution number 2021-3, converting election of school board members to a zone system. The current at-large school board voting system is a type of voice and voter suppression to its core for the communities and students Salem-Keizer School District serves. We must do better and ensure that this elected body is a representation of students. At this time, it still is not. The current system is very outdated and not in touch with reality in the Salem-Keizer School District. I urge you to support this resolution and make this equitable to be more inclusive of the students and families served by Salem-Keizer School District. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Jordan, who is our next caller, please?
Yes, our next caller is Alex, and he will be talking. We're moving on to non-agenda callers next.
All right, thank you.
Alex, you can unmute and go ahead.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, I'll be reading a letter that was sent to Christy and basically all the school board members. Then I haven't got a response at all, but I'll read it. Throughout the time in the Salem-Keizer School District sponsored task force that has been in place, that has been technically referred, and we've been technically referred as the loose students. Even though we are two, the Salem-Keizer School District students of color who are directly impacted by the school development pipeline. The school district and the school board and the student task force and the superintendent, Christy Perry, has technically created a division and targeted us for the civic involvement in the community. We have been discriminated against and retaliated against by the Salem-Keizer School District. Being a part of the student task force created a toxic stress trauma on us. We no longer trust being a part of the direct-led committees because we learned that being the outspoken gets you in trouble. Student task force met with administrations without us in secret and made decisions that targeted us. Again, we were technically othered by the school district and student task force for civic involvement in this community. There has been attempts to weaponize our civic actions and the freedom of expression and intimidate us and silence us. The student task force has been used to exactly do what we knew it was going to do, distract us from the racial justice advocacy and this other tools in oppression. And as youth, we are often publicly advocating for ourselves in our communities. We fear for our lives, and we often get targeted by white supremacists and people in positions of power. We no longer feel safe advocating for ourselves. We blame the administration for failing us to protect us and making us feel safe in this process. The adults who were paid positions in power are supposed to be there to listen to us, but they have done everything in their power to push us out and decisions in getting police out of school. Our administrations have also done everything in their power to use student task force as a shield of their white supremacy and avoid making change in our district. In 2020, one school board member, we found connections with the 3%ers and white nationalist organization, and another did blackface during the entire school board meeting. Rather than holding these public officials accountable, what our district and school board have done is target the students of color who for years have been advocating for current administration elected officials in the system and place that have been to create system of equality in our schools. Because of this, we condemn in the way in which some of us have been treated on the task force. And I demand, along with my peers, the school resource officers be terminated. And we demand that you stop playing with our lives and listen to the real concerns in racial disability justice in the Salem-Keizer School District. Why are you continuing to ignore me? Will you continue pushing me and my peers out of our schools? Will you continue to fund these systems to harm us? Will you continue using the student task force as a shield for your lack of action to address the police and presence in our schools? And I want to add one more thing. This is for Christy Perry. I've seen that you're scared of losing $30 million, but I'm scared of losing my brothers and my cousins, and my community isn't driving Benz like you are. You're making $200K plus, and we are forced to be riding the buses every day to work and to our appointments. We are forced to live under unemployment that doesn't even pay enough to pay the rent. You're white privilege, and what you're doing is an anti-racist.
Jordan, who is our next caller, please?
Our next caller is Tony. Tony, if you may unmute and you may go ahead.
Tony, go ahead.
My name is Tony. I am a student in the Salem-Keizer School District who has been silenced. In 2017, I came across to this board to tell my story. I told it over and over again. I told it to my school board, to the school board members. I told it to teachers. I told it to Christy Perry. It is now 2021, and you continue to ignore me. My experiences, my expertise around the school district pipeline. So once again, I will tell you my story for you to hear, for you to understand why it's important for the school district, for the school district to dismantle the school district pipeline, deportation pipeline. Before I was old enough to get my driver's license or cast my first vote, I came face to face with one of the issues facing young Black and brown people today, the school to prison and deportation pipeline. I was 8 years old the first time police arrested me in school. I was in my classroom when I got called out to the administration office. I was told I was in trouble for altercation that happened. Police officer came in, handcuffed me and detained me and questioned me until my mom came to pick me up. I was expelled from school. When I was 12, I was arrested again. For this time, I was taken straight to juvenile detention. The whole school saw me. I was taken away. I was confused. I was scared, and I was alone. For 3 months, I was in detention. I wasn't me. I was just a barcode. Cell 1B1 Martinez. That incident sent me on the path that changed my life forever. When you put a kid behind brick walls for a long time without them, it's a guarantee they are going to turn to whatever outlet comes their way. For me, that was drugs. For the next few years, I was in and out of juvenile systems, moved between detentions and alternative schools and rehab facilities, while also dealing with homelessness. I know firsthand how trauma from those experiences can follow you long after you stop talking about it. The sad reality is that my story isn't unique. There are too many young people, especially low-income Black and brown people, including I have met through the youth justice movement, who are unfairly punished, and they are pushed out of the public school system that should be safe haven where they can grow and learn. In my school district, in Salem, Oregon, Latinx students with disability are 39% of student population, but they are more than 62 of the students with disabilities who get expelled. So I ask you again, what will you do for me, for my peers, for all the students in the Salem and the school to prison pipeline? We have been asking you to address police in school. What you did was push aside my voice, and together with Superintendent Christy Perry, you have created division among the students. What will you do? Will you create a change? What will you do?
Jordan, who is our next caller, please?
Our next caller is Isaiah. Isaiah, you may unmute and proceed.
Did that work?
Yes, please. Isaiah, go ahead.
All right, Isaiah Swan, IA, Lamb Elementary. I didn't have time today to write anything fancy, so I'll just speak from the heart, as it were. Yeah, I'm just baffled, honestly. Like we're gonna be rolling dice with people's lives every time kids come into our schools, right? You know that our staff doesn't even follow the protocols that are in here and now. You know how if we can't trust our staff to follow these, we're not gonna be able to trust our kids to keep their mask on all day. I mean, the first kid that has a blowout even if we have full compliance, we're rolling dice, and we won't have full compliance. And whose lives are we rolling these dice with? It ain't mine. It ain't our staff. It ain't you. It's the lives of the people who can't afford to be at home anymore because they need to go out and work. The lives of people who have to risk their lives, or else bizarre, you know? And why are we doing this? You know, I have to, you know what's going to happen. You know that the numbers are going to rise. You know that people are going to, you're never going to read the names in the news, most likely. Like, I mean, you thought about it. You must have thought about it. So it can't be naivety. It can't be some idealistic fantasy that it's all going to work out perfectly. So what is it? I mean, the only two options I got is you think it's worth it, or you think we don't have a choice. And if it's worth it, I would love to know why. I would love to know whose lives it is worth, because it apparently wasn't worth mine or my coworkers. So it must be worth, you know, our kids' parents or someone at the grocery store that one of them happens to cough on. Or you think we don't have a choice. And that's the part that, of course we have a choice. You know, that's people like us, people that get degrees and you know, get jobs so that we can serve to make a better place by making decisions for other people. You know, that's what we do. That's the thing. We always do the right thing until right at the point where it could cost us personally. You know, where it could cost us the job, cost us prestige, cost us something. And then we think, oh, we've done all we can. Look, we don't have a choice anymore. You know, the cliff is there. We can't go off the cliff. So then we just shove everyone else off. I don't fathom it. I really don't. You know, I really don't. Yeah. And also, West Salem, we need to figure that. You know, that needs to be public, because it's got to be better than the rumors I'm hearing. It really does. It's got to be better than the rumors. Anyways, Marty Hines, a white supremacist. Paul Cobb performed a blackface. The rest of you, well, hopefully they'll have you figured out in a few months, judging by the way the elections are going. All right, thanks. Bye.
So, Jordan, do you have any more callers, please?
Yes, our last caller tonight is Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you may unmute.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay. I'm Elizabeth Swan, a Keizer resident, a past district employee, and a housemate of current district employees. I stand in continued solidarity with students and families who know deeply the effects of SROs and the school-to-prison pipeline has on them and their families generationally. The SRO contract must be ended permanently. We know that the history of school policing is inherently racist, was designed to be racist as part of the so-called war on drugs. We know that Salem police is deeply racist and invested in white supremacy, as shown by their behavior. One recent instance being January 1st in downtown Salem. We know that the so-called issues that are meant to be solved by policing will never be solved by policing, especially since they are deeply varied in source. Why are we trying to come up with one violent solution for a myriad of problems, and many of which aren't really problems? They just are opportunities where we need more support and less, not violence, or people trained to do violence. Student safety is better addressed through counselors, health professionals, explicit addressing of white supremacy. The source of much bullying is, we know, bigoted things that students are learning from their society, their world, and that's often white supremacy. There are just so many alternatives. There are districts all over the country that have either never had SROs and are doing, I don't know, fine, or have ended those contracts and are coming up with new things. And we don't have to reinvent it. We can ask other districts what they're doing. They're doing it. It's just so apparent that this district is deeply invested in centering the comfort of the white moderates, as MLK Jr. called us, by maintaining the status quo as closely as possible, just little reforms, and it's always at the expense of marginalized students and families. And they will always tell you that, and we just don't listen. We don't listen most of the time. As someone who lives with people who will be expected to return to in-person teaching, and someone who is listening to our community, I am deeply disturbed by the move to reopen schools, especially to the capacity y'all are talking about, and it's too much. We know that the new COVID variants are way higher risk of transmission. We know that youth do die of this virus. We know that the vaccine only protects those who have it until the vast majority of people are vaccinated and those sick with COVID are no longer contagious. I know that my housemate could come home with COVID and they could be protected, but still contagious to those of us who are not. I know that we have people in our households who would die if they contracted COVID. This is incredibly foolish. And once again, centering the white moderate who has been advocating to ignore this virus since the first data came out showing that BIPOC, immune-compromised, and elderly people are most at risk. I understand that there are students who would be at reduced risk if they had access to a school building due to unstable living conditions, but that is simply not what y'all are talking about. I support changing to vote by zone for our school board representation. The amount of out-of-district money that pours into our community to elect conservative school board members is obscene and puts people who could truly represent their neighborhoods at extreme disadvantage. The ability to campaign in other zones for representation in a different zone simply doesn't make sense. It's a way to stack the deck against historically marginalized zones. This school board represents white supremacy both in structure and personal behavior. The last public meeting that had public comment was a lot to unpack. Danielle Bethel showed us an incredibly clear example of tokenism and the dehumanization in that racist behavior when she continually talked over students' heads to Christy Perry for, and I quote, access to the students of the task force. Once again, no one called out this blatant racism. Bethel students are not resources that you can earn access to, especially by asking Perry and not the students themselves. Goss once again talks about the so-called greater good when speaking against changing voting to zone by zone. I think the whole community would benefit from you saying what you actually mean. Do you think white and economically privileged people are more deserving of making decisions for our many distinct communities in our different zones? You've said that before, and this is what it sounds like you're saying again. I'm going to sign off through there today. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth. We got about a few minutes left. It's 8:34. I believe at 8:49 is when we. Is there any, Ms. McDaniel? Is there anything else that you have? Some videos?
Right. I think we have a couple videos.
Yeah. So we can we got it's 8:35 in my clock and.
Yeah. So I have 5 videos that are ready to go.
So let's kind of make sure we'll try to get as many videos as possible. Rest, we'll definitely make it available to our board directors and on the website for the community.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm one of the students from the Salem-Keizer School District that was kicked out of the task force and is personally impacted by the school-to-prison pipeline. I want to start off by saying I sent this letter out to the school board members and as well as the superintendent in the beginning of last month, and I'm just here to read it off again. Throughout the time, the Salem-Keizer School District sponsored task force has been in place. We have been tactically referred as the loose students, even though we too are the Salem-Keizer School District students of color. We are directly impacted by the school-to-prison pipeline. The school district, the school board, and the student task force and Superintendent Christy Perry have tactically recreated a division and targeted us for civic involvement in the community during this past year. We have been discriminated against and being retaliated against. Being a part of the student task force created toxic stress and trauma on us. We no longer trust being a part of school district-led committees because we learned being outspoken gets you in trouble. student task force met with administration in secret and made decisions to target us. And again, we were tactically othered by the district and the student task force for civic involvement in the community. There has been attempts to weaponize our civic actions and freedom of expression to intimidate us and silence us. The student task force has been used to exactly what we knew it would do: distract us from our racial justice advocacy, and this is another tool of oppression. And as a youth who often publicly advocating for ourselves and our community, we fear for our lives because we are often targeted by white supremacists and people in positions of power. We no longer feel safe advocating for ourselves, and we blame administration for failing to protect us and making us feel safe in this process. The adults who were paid positions of power are supposed to be there to listen to us, but they have done everything in their power to push us out of the decision of getting police out of schools. Our school administrations have also done everything in their power to use the task force as a shield for their white supremacy and avoid making change in our district. In 2020, one of the school board members were found to have connections with the 3%ers and a white nationalist organization. Another did blackface during an entire school board meeting. And rather than holding these public officials accountable, what our school district and school board have done is target the students of color, who for years have advocated for equity. This entire process has only proven the current administration, elected officials, and system in place still have much to do to create systems of equity in our schools. Because of this, we have condemned the way that we have been treated on the student task force. I demand, along with my peers, that the school resource officers be terminated, and we demand that you stop playing with our lives and listen to our real concerns and racial and disability justice in the Salem-Keizer School District.
I am a student in the Salem-Keizer School District. I was one of the students who got kicked out of the student task force, and I am a student directly affected by the school-to-prison pipeline. When I was in 3rd grade, a teacher called the cops on me because she said she didn't feel safe. The cops came in and handcuffed me really hard. They always handcuff us until it hurt, especially students with special education needs. They took me to the juvenile department. My mom is a single mom and had to work a lot. I stayed there until she could pick me up at 11 o'clock at night. I was an 8-year-old kid with PTSD and anxiety. I needed the support, not to be incarcerated. When I was in middle school, every day I would have to go into a room with a cop and get searched. I continued to be criminalized and disconnected from my education. A year ago, I was expelled from high school. My school supposed to send me a notice and give me an opportunity to tell my story, but they never did. I just wanted to be in school learning, and I continued getting pushed out. This type of thing has been happening to so many people in my community. My cousin has been in out of the criminal justice system since he was in middle school. He is now serving 15 years in prison. He was only 16 years old when he was trialed as an adult. The same cop that knew him and as an adult knew him from when he was in middle school. We are getting policed everywhere. And in this criminalization can easily lead to the school to deportation pipeline. 4 years ago, a young person from my area had to go to court from the juvenile facility. After hearing he and his mom were taken by ICE, Oregon has a sanctuary policy, but if you send young people into prison and courts, ICE will find them and their families. I strongly believe that police should not be in schools. They are always profiling black and brown youth, and they escalate situations when we really just need support. I would rather have a counselor that looks like me, that comes from a similar background. I want someone who listens to me. This week, we witnessed 3 brutal attacks on 3 young black youth by police. One of the victims being a 9-year-old child who was pepper sprayed by armed grown policemen who failed to support her during a mental health crisis and put her life at risk. Again, a child was brutally attacked by a grown man who are given their title of policing. How much more evidence do you need to understand how important it is for you to remove police from our schools. We don't feel safe with police or security guards who are there to only criminalize us in our schools.
My name is Tony. I am a student in the Salem-Keizer School District. In 2017, I came to this board to tell my story. I told it over and over again. I told it to the school board members, I told it to the teachers, and I told it to the Superintendent Christy Perry. It was now 2021, and you continue to ignore me. My experiences and my expertise around the school to prison pipeline. So once again, I will tell my story for you to hear, for you to understand. It is so important for the school district to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. Before I was old enough to get my driver's license to cast my first vote, I came face to face with one of the biggest issues facing young black and brown young people today. That is the school to prison pipeline and deportation pipeline. I was 8 years old the first time police arrested me in school. I was in my classroom when I got called out to the administrative office. I was told I was in trouble for altercation. A police officer came in, handcuffed me, and detained me. Until questioning, my mom came to pick me up. I was expelled from school. When I was 12 years old, I was arrested again, and this time I was taken straight to Joanna detention. The whole school saw me as I was taken away. I was confused, I was scared, and I was alone. For 3 months, I was in detention. I wasn't feeling myself. I was a barcode, cell B1 Martinez. That incident set me on a path that changed my life forever. When you put a little kid behind bars for a long time without helping them, it's a guarantee they are going to turn whatever outlet comes their way. For me, that was drugs. For the next few years, I was in and out of juvenile systems, moving between detention and alternative schools and rehabilitation facilities, while also dealing with houselessness. I know firsthand how the trauma from those experiences can follow you long after people stop talking about it. The sad reality is that my story isn't unique. There are too many young people, especially low-income black and brown young people, including many I have met throughout the youth justice movement, who are unfairly punished and who are pushed out of public school systems that should be safe haven where we can grow and learn. In my school district in Salem, Oregon, Latinx students with disabilities are about 39% of students, but they are more than 62% of students with disabilities who get expelled. So I ask you again, what will you do for me, for my peers, for all the students in the school to prison and deportation pipeline? We have been asking you to do this and addressing police in school. What you did instead is push my voice aside, and together with the school board, Superintendent Christy Perry, you have created division among students of color.
Hi, my name is Alondra. I am a 9th grade, and I'm a student in the Salem-Keizer School District. At a young age, I understand the damage that this district has caused students because I have personally been impacted by the school rules and police presence. I have been impacted by the school to prison pipeline. I have the experiences. I am the expert. I'm not the one that has to read up on what racism is because I live it every day, in and out of the school. And yet, I got kicked out of a task force that was supposed to hear me out, but only caused me extra stress. I was called close-minded for sharing my own experiences and standing up for myself and the violence my peers and I have faced at the hands of police and security. I have joined these meetings time and time again, relieving my trauma that being criminalized as a person of color has caused me, and it has constantly been ignored. Before I was more aware of how corrupt this disturbing district actually was, I was scared to speak out. And that's what the district does. It robs youth of their rights and their voices. Throughout all my time in this district, I have gotten in trouble for speaking out against racism and homophobia in my school. I felt upset and worried because I wasn't able to defend my classmate for him being part of the LGBTQ+ community because I was kicked out of the class for sharing what I felt. I have been targeted and followed by security and other staff members, while some of you will never experience the stress that this causes. While I remain in the Salem-Keizer School District, I have learned to defend myself now as I get older as a form of survival. I have constantly been intimidated by the district staff to stay silent on what I have faced. I have been singled out in classrooms for the organizing I do for my community and my peers, but I refuse to stay silent. I demand that you act now. Remove police from schools now. Invest in my education and that of my Black, Indigenous peers and peers of color.
My name is Gerald Turner, and I'm a math and science teacher at West Salem High School, as well as a member of the Salem community. I am testifying tonight regarding Agenda Item 4A, Ready Schools, Safe Learners. Having just finished a semester of comprehensive distance learning, I can say this. It is difficult. It is hard work. I miss seeing my students in person, and yet I urge the board to reconsider their plans to move back to in-person learning. In many decisions in our district, we talked about applying the equity lens. In Oregon, our Latino community makes up about 11% of the population, but is made up about 33% of all COVID cases. Although there is limited data in Oregon, the Black community and Native communities nationwide have similarly been disproportionately harmed by the pandemic. We have tools to help students through distance learning. Limited in-person instruction and targeted interventions have made a difference. We cannot undo infections, particularly when they spread to and through multi-generational households. But we can deal with learning loss during this time. We can make that up. These are challenging times. Give us the resources to stay the course, provide support, and protect our marginalized and vulnerable communities. Thank you.
I think Ms. McDaniel, I guess that should be all.
Yes.
So I really like your idea of kind of doing everything in 1 hour. And can we take do you think we should go with an action item now, or can you finish? Or you want to take a 2-minute break? Okay.
I'd be thrilled to take a quick break.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Let's take about 3 minutes break. We have a quorum. Yep, we're all here.
Satya, can I ask a quick question before we start?
Go ahead.
Can we kind of gauge where we are on time? It's almost 9 o'clock. I see Danielle's face light up. Can we gauge where we are and decide how much more we want to do this evening?
Yes.
We've been at this since 5 and
it's been a long day.
I know most of us have been at it all day already.
All right. Director Blassie, we got 2 action items, and Director Leopold wants to move the 3rd action item to next school board meeting. So that is the agenda modification. And we are time crunched for 2 of those action items, so that we have no choice but to get it through that. So we will we will keep the discussion very limited. And
well, is it possible to move the information section minus our board meeting scheduled to our work session? And try to start our work session at like 5:30. It's all important, but I really would like for us to establish a policy on a hard end time going forward. I just, this whole being here till 10 o'clock is just a bit much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Let's kind of run it around and see if there's a show of hand, if there's a support for that. And Superintendent Perry, what do you think of getting the information standard report? Is there any timeline that we need to meet?
No, there's no timeline. And I'm gonna, the optimal learning environment, we'll ask Carl to make that open it up for questions since you have the slides. Because that, again, has more process. So I think we can move information and work quickly through the action items.
How about the consent calendar? That can also move? Or
that's just a couple minutes. We need that one done.
All right.
You agree to be done by 9:30?
I think we can get it done sooner. We'll keep it limited to 1 question. Rest of the questions you have. There's 6B and 6A, we cannot move. They're time sensitive. Items,
we got it. Thank you. Thank you for.
All right. I think let's get rolling. We'll now move to the action items. I'm going to invite as our student advisor, Ms. Mabinton, to read the Black History Month proclamation. And for this occasion, I have invited Dr. Irwin Brown to be a guest, and he'll be witnessing this. And he's the chair of the NAACP Salem Chapter's Education Committee. Dr. Brown, welcome. Thank you for being there. Advisor Mabinton, you have the proclamation and you get to read this.
And Ms. Mabinton, will you share with me when you want me to share the screen versus when you want it to be on the gallery view?
You can go ahead and share your screen if you'd like to.
Okay.
Okay, I will begin.
Yes.
This is the Black History Month proclamation. Whereas the 2021 theme for Black History Month is the Black family representation, identity, and diversity, focusing on the ways in which Black families were separated from their birthplaces through the atrocities of slavery, and the effects this has despite Jim Crow laws, sunset laws, and white nationalism. And whereas in 1926, Carter G. Woodson and Minister Jesse E. Moreland laid the foundation for Black History Month because the achievements of Black Americans were all but erased from national, from national history and underrepresented in important policy decisions. And whereas in 1976, President Gerald Ford made Black History Month a national observance, and the second week of February coincides with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And the event inspired schools and communities nationwide to organize local celebration, establish history clubs, and host performances and lectures. And whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by Black Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development, and honor the memory of the millions of enslaved Africans who died during the transatlantic slave trade. And whereas while the observance of Black History Month calls our community's attention to the continued need to battle racism and to build a society that lives up to democratic ideals. And whereas this year's celebrations and recognition of Black History Month are especially significant as we reflect on the historically monumental inauguration of our nation's first African-American Vice President, Kamala Harris, reminding students of their capabilities and potentials. And whereas the Salem-Keizer School District recognizes the high quality education can create social and economic uplift where all students graduate and prepared for a successful life. Now, therefore, the Salem-Keizer School District Board of Directors proclaims February 2021 to be Black History Month and urges our communities to join in making this a period of rededication to the principles of remembrance, justice, and equity for all people.
Advisor Mabinton, thank you very much. This is very nice of you to read this. And it has also been historic for us to have you be the first student advisor to join us. Thank you. Dr. Brown, thank you very much for joining. Now, is there anybody want to move a motion to accept?
I move that we adopt the resolution that was just read to us.
I second.
Okay, so we're going to toss up, right? So Director Kylo moves the resolution as read by Advisor Mabinton, and Vice Chair Bethel was a few seconds or microseconds before Director Leopold. So Vice Chair Bethel gets, sorry. Vice Chair Bethel seconds. Is there any discussion? Now I want to start with Director Leopold. 1 point.
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yes, please.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that I'm honored that to be able to see this proclamation be passed and for us to be able to do what we can to recognize and listen and learn from our Black communities and our African American community. Advisor Mebington, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I think you're an excellent district board, and I think you're bright, you're sharp, you're smart, and I think you're paving the ground. I think for a lot of students and students of color, and I think that as a country and as a community here locally, we're starting to look at a lot of our systems and reflect on the outcomes and the results of those systems and working to fix those. And it's hard and it's a tough road, but we have to take a moment every now and then, to recognize the success of our African American community and the good things that have been done, all the awesome, amazing contributions to a culture that literally built half the country, and I just think it's really cool as I learn more about Black history. And, I'm humbled to be able to vote yes on this today.
All right, thank you. Director Kyler, do you have any discussion? Director Hine.
I don't know what a person could add after Director Lippold spoke.
Yeah, thank you. Director Blasi.
Just real quick, I appreciate the wording in the proclamation, but I just wanted to say just a huge shout out to Lynette, and thank you for everything that you've done for the district and for joining us on the board. I appreciate not just your student perspective, but I appreciate your student of color perspective. So thank you for being willing to join us, and thank you for reading that this evening.
Advisor Mebington, do you have any discussion?
I do. I just want to say, thank you guys for moving this proclamation forward. Today in America, it is getting better, but there's a lot of things that we could all still work on. There's a lot of systems that are built off of racism, like Jesse said, and an ongoing battle every day. So I appreciate you guys' willing to learn. And I would just say, not even just this month, but every month of the year to, hold yourself accountable and be aware. And I see that you guys are very willing to learn, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Advisor. Vice Chair Bethel, do you have?
Well, I concur with the rest of our board members that have spoken so far. And I just want to say that I appreciate Advisor Mebington for making this proclamation heard tonight and for standing out on that stage. And also to Dr. Irvin Brown. I really appreciate you being here with us tonight and also last month and engage in conversations with us and our district as we move forward in a lot of different things in our community, but specifically the learning and collaboration that needs to be done.
Director Goss, do you have?
Well, I support what has been said by the others. And Lynette, you are a pleasure to have on our board. And thank you for spending your times.
Thank you. I really think, this is more than a proclamation. I think it should be a call to action. And we need to really start saying, no longer it's enough to say, let's kind of narrow the gap. We need to close the gap. Until we have one America for all our children, our work is not done. Let's not kid ourselves. We need to be boldly saying, let's talk about zero gap. Let's go with that kind of vision, because we need all hands on deck in this country. There's no other option. All of us are tied to each other in common destiny. So let's start with that zero vision, where there is zero gap, achievement gap, wealth gap, academic gap, and then start asking what kind of change we should put in place. Anything short of that, I'm not sure entirely the intent of the Black History Month can be realized. So that is one way I look at it. So this will be like a call to action. And as Advisor Mabinton said, it's not like have a resolution every month or kind of remember every month, but we need to start working. Intention is not the same as outcome. We need a lot of work to do. So hopefully, board and district can use this as a call to action. Is there anybody I missed? If not, are we ready to take a vote on this? All right. I'm going to call the names, and if all those who want to support this, say aye. Vice Chair Bethel.
Aye.
Dr. Blasi.
Aye.
Dr. Hine.
Aye.
Dr. Leopold.
Aye.
Okay. Dr. Kylo.
Aye.
Dr. Goss.
Aye.
And I as well as Satya Chandrakiri. I also vote aye. So this vote passes. This resolution is adopted by unanimous vote. There is no nay or no one abstained from voting. So thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Brown, for joining us in this. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Advisor Mabinton. We now move on to 6B. Going to be a little presentation by the second action item is approve optimum learning environment, charter school renewal. This is a time-sensitive decision we need. So I'm going to ask Superintendent Perry if there's a brief overview on this item. Superintendent Perry.
Yeah, good evening again. This is the first step in the action is you have to vote for the intent to renew. And Carl Paulson, the principal from Optimum Learning Environmental Charter School, is on with us tonight. And I wonder if, since you have the slides, if we just might open it up to see if you have questions of him, because you're going to see more of him in the coming months as we work through the charter renewal. So Principal Paulson and Dr. Sproles, would that be amenable to you?
Yes, Superintendent Perry.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay. So you have the slides in your board packet, and do you have any questions about the charter school or about what you would be voting on tonight?
I'm just going to open it up as I see Dr. Kylo. Go ahead.
Hey, Carl.
Yes.
Of the great techniques that you all use at Optimum Learning, which ones have you shared at other schools?
I'm sorry, Paul, I'm not sure I understand your question. Which things?
My understanding is a charter school is to be creative and to use innovation. What creative things and innovations have you done that you've now shared with other schools in the district?
So part of the agreement has always been that the charter school would work on some things and then share them within our own school. And I'm new to the school, so it's hard for me to say exactly what are those things that have been shared out with other schools around the district. Typically, environmental projects that have been either planned and supported by the OLE staff and the students are then shared with the rest of the Forest Ridge community. An example would be the naturescape beside the school that's maintained by OLE but shared and used for an outdoor learning environment for the rest of the Forest Ridge community. And then outreach projects like they've done down by what's called down by the riverside in the park down there, just going towards the ferry. So those are just a couple of things I can pull off the top of my head that are the things that the staff and the students of OLE work on first, and then use that as an opportunity to present with the rest of the community.
Is there any other questions? So Vice Chair Bethel, and then we'll go to Director Blasi.
This isn't a question so much of a statement. My children were Forest Ridge students, and so they participated regularly with OLE students in various ways. And to potentially answer Director Kylo's question, science is more of a hands-on concept in OLE than it is in general ed classrooms. And my daughters both directly impacted from OLE being on their property and participating in field trips, along with, I think it was Measure 98 dollars that participated in helping get kiddos to outdoor school, where OLE pretty much did hands-on science stuff for the kids in Forest Ridge. So I'm a huge proponent of OLE and what they do community-wide, and down by the riverside is fantastic. I'd encourage any school board member to participate because you learn a lot about things you didn't know existed in the valley. And I do hope that someday they can replicate some of their programs, if you will, so other elementary schools can have more of that hands-on tool. But I understand a lot of it's funding in general, but otherwise I think it's an excellent program.
And Dr. Blasi, now you had a question.
I do, and thank you. So my question for our charter schools is always around increasing diversity in families and students and staff as well. And I see from your presentation that you talk about, your path to recruiting and supporting learners and increasing diversity of student population. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've actually done and the impacts? Because we sometimes hear from our charter schools that increased diversity could include things such as where a school is located or outreach, but I'm really interested in actionable items and what those impacts have been, including what the diversity of your teaching staff looks like.
Mm-hmm. So I tried to anticipate some of those questions in developing that, and we really are on the beginning of a path. I'm not trying to promote that we're well on our way to all of these things, but we have tried to use the human resources that we have to our best advantage. We, besides publicizing things, recruitment efforts, within our own community with our newsletters, our Thursday Thoughts, our parent club. We also just try to utilize the parents and community members that we have that are already engaged in our school, and making sure that they're our most effective outreach to others. We try to share with people, and we have been sharing with people in both our Forest Ridge and our OLE communities, the opportunities, but to be cognizant, to be thinking about not only how are we diversifying our staff and our boards and our student population, but just using that equity lens. And we have done joint professional development to try to make sure people are aware that this is something that exists in the district. And when that catchphrase is thrown out, that it really has something behind it. So both of those staffs have been through training on that. And then we actively look for staff members who are from a more diverse background. We are a small school, and many of our teachers are long-term staff members in our building, so we don't have a lot of turnover, which would create opportunities to bring in more people. But that's something that on our interview teams and when we're talking with staff about what we're looking for as we move forward. That's something that's part of that conversation.
Is there any other questions? Sorry, Dr. Blasi, you got a follow-up question?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, not to belabor this, but I would be interested in hearing a little bit about some of your outreach, before we vote on this, because I guess that's an area I'd hope to see some more efforts. The actual outreach, besides the community word of mouth, how are you reaching out to communities of color, non-English speaking communities? What's the actual outreach that you're doing? So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that before we vote.
I think taking a cue from Valley Inquiry, and I have talked with Jesse, and I saw what he had shared with the board a couple weeks ago. So taking a cue from that and looking at some of the things that other people have used successfully. And Jesse really actively went recruiting, not just for students, but for people to help serve on a board and bring a voice to his board. So that's something that we take to heart as we're looking for our opportunities. And all of the charter principals occasionally have opportunities to get together as well. So that's something where we're a supportive community of each other's ideas and kind of unique challenges, because we all do represent these small little pockets. I don't know that I have something more specific to share with you now. As I say, we try to be cognizant of this, and I think one of the first steps is the mind shift for our staff and our families, and then our community, so that we're being aware is the first thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is there any other questions around? I have a comment to make. I really appreciate Principal Paulson for coming, and one of the things I find is some of the charter schools are unique models of best, like a benchmark of best practice. Some of the lessons that we can learn from the charter model can hopefully be scaled up in other programs. So it's like, it really serves a very unique need. Of course, my son didn't go to your charter school. He went to a different charter school in nature, Jane Goodall. So I think there is some real value. And especially in this digital age, there is so much to teach each other and learn and find ways to scale up. And, for what I call the return on investment, for the amount of funding and amazing work the students get to learn in a different model of learning. So it kind of gives different children different opportunities and different type of learning. And hopefully we all can learn good benchmarks and then kind of find something that fits in, scale it up. So thank you for coming. If I don't hearing no other discussion, is there somebody who would like to move a motion that this is one of the important steps as we move forward?
I'll make a motion that we move forward.
Was that Dr. Hine made a motion?
Yes.
Someone seconded?
I'll second. This is
So
Danielle.
Dr. Hine moves the motion to approve the optimum learning environment charter school renewal, and it's seconded by Vice Chair Bethel. Is there any discussion or is it time to? Okay, hearing none, are we ready to take a vote? And I'll go around and say those who are in favor say aye. Vice Chair Bethel.
Aye.
Dr. Blasi.
Aye.
Dr. Hine.
Aye.
Dr. Leopold.
Aye.
Dr. Kylo.
No.
Dr. Goss.
Aye.
And Satya Chandragiri, I also vote aye. So so everyone votes aye except Dr. Leopold, who votes no. And with that, I have to mention each name.
That was,
It's Director Kylo, not Director Leopold.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Kylo votes no. I am. I apologize. Director Leopold, you didn't say how you vote. Did you say that?
I did. I said aye.
Okay. So all have voted aye except Director Paul Kylo. So the motion passes as presented. This is an interim step, I understand, right? Superintendent Perry, this is one of the steps, and there's a timeline. We had to do it today so that it'll come back again, don't worry.
We move on to the negotiation of the contract.
Correct, it will come back again. Every step we'll have to go through this. So Director Leopold, you have the 6C, adoption of resolution. Do you want to move a motion to say, now there is an action item, I need something from you. How do you want us to proceed?
Well, we moved it already from the agenda for this month to March, I believe.
Okay, I'm going to ask a parliamentary procedural question from Mr. Dakopoulos. Does it need a motion to move it and needs to be seconded as a?
You already did that in the beginning when you said that there was a modification.
Agenda modification. So thank you very much. With that, we'll be bringing it up in the next business meeting. So now we'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there any member who any director who wishes to pull an item from the calendar? Director Hine?
Yes, I'd like to pull 7A. It's a grant, title 1920 carryover.
All right. Is there a motion to accept as the consent calendar?
I move for the board to approve the consent calendar.
Okay. There is person to second. Anybody seconds that?
Would
we need to say that something was pulled though?
Yes,
yeah,
that's
pulling the item. Do you want to report on it?
Director Blasi, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk over, but Marty, are you asking for the item to be pulled so you can get a report on it, or you just?
Yeah, I just have a question. So, I think normally we vote on everything and then go to the question, but we could go to the question now if the chair wanted, answer my question and then do the whole calendar. It's up to you.
May I propose something?
Chair, I guess.
We'll pull that item and then vote on other two, and then we can discuss that. Would that be okay?
Yes.
So the motion is for 7B and 7C of the consent calendar. Is there anybody to move that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we haven't had anybody move that yet.
Oh, I'll move that.
Okay, then is there anyone to second that?
Second.
7B. Director Blasi seconds that. Is there any discussion on this 7B and 7C? Hearing none, are we ready to vote on that? Okay, all those in favor of 7B and 7C as presented. Vice Chair Bethel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Blasi?
Aye.
Director Hine?
Aye.
Director Leopold?
Aye.
Director Kylo?
Aye.
Director Goss?
I'll vote aye.
And I, Satya Chandagiri, I vote aye. So 7B and 7C of the consent calendar passes unanimously, all 7 aye. Now let's go to 7A. Director Hine.
So I was just wanting a little more information on 7A. It's quite a very large chunk of money. And I'm sure the people in the public are curious what that is all about.
All right, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Sproles. He's prepared with the answer for that. Thanks for giving us a heads up on the question.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Sproles, let me know if you want me to share the screen.
No, that's okay. Thanks, Ethan. So Director Hine, this is a large amount of money for a carryover, and it's unusually large given the COVID constraints that we've had to be able to spend the Title I dollars. So we're hoping to use this carryover in a lot of different ways. We're spending about $1 million on expanding our care and connection for students as we progress into a hybrid learning model for CDL. We are hoping that we can expand our supplies that we give to students. We're hoping that we can have them have some school supplies at schools that they can take home to be able to use in CDL when we have students back. We're also setting aside a chunk of the money for summer programs, and you're going to hear a lot, a soon to be coming presentation on summer programs, because we are thinking about summer programs as a way to accelerate learning for students that may have some learning loss given the last few months. So we're also setting aside money for technology, ongoing technology purchases. We really want to use the technology that we purchased this year as a launch pad to more expansive digital education systems in the years to come. So everything from buying Chromebooks to continue to increasing connectivity for our families on a long-term basis as well. A creative thing that we're going to use with the money is to create learning hubs for families who are currently in CDL. We're talking about those with elementary and secondary learning hubs. The technical part of that is we need to really control the learning environment that we send our students into differently than sending them into the community. So we have a lot of plans for this money on how it will be spent moving forward. Most of it to try to support students as we transition into hybrid and support students with at-home learning as well.
Any other questions to Dr. Sproles, please? So, hearing that, Dr. Sproles, will part of this money be used to upskill the parents' ability to use digital technology? Because some of them actually spend time with the grandparents or parents or whoever is taking care of our kids.
We don't have that.
These kids are staying at home.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Dr. Chandragiri.
Go ahead.
We don't have the money set aside for that explicitly. We do have a component of our parent institute with the learning hubs that we've targeted to be able to do student and parent learning as a part of that. And then, of course, with our summer programming, there's oftentimes a piece that goes home to accelerate learning at home as well. But the money we have set aside here isn't explicitly to do a lot of parent education.
You know, I must have asked this question, and couldn't quite completely understand then. Could part of the Title I money be used to teach parents how to use the digital divide and then close it so that they in turn can ensure the kids can learn?
There is a component of Title I that is parent education and outreach. And a lot of that we do through our community, our CSOCs, our community school outreach coordinators. But primarily we work to try to get it to be direct services to kids. So it usually doesn't go this far.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion that we pass 7A.
Is there anybody to second that?
I second.
And so the motion is to pull 7A.
Pass. To pass 7A.
Pass 7A, okay. Yep. And Vice Chair Bethel, Director Hine moves the motion and Vice Chair Bethel seconds it. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, are we ready to vote? Okay. Vice Chair Bethel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Blasi?
Yes.
Director Hine?
Aye.
Director Leopold?
Aye.
Director Kylo?
Aye.
Director Goss?
Aye.
And Satya Chandrakiri, aye as well. So it passes unanimously. The motion is approved. 7A passes. There are no readings, and the information and standard reports, we have decided to move it to the next board meeting. And is there a quick board report, like 30 seconds or 1 minute per person? Dr. Kyle.
I was privileged to participate in a meeting at North High School regarding bringing the IB program to North High School. It was a well-run meeting, and I understand the results may be positive. So that was good.
Wonderful. Good job. Dr. Goss, you'll go around.
I talked to a number of parents during this last time since the last meeting, and a lot of it was regarding the change to the voting, to the manner in which we vote. So I have collected information that I'll share next time when we go.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hine.
Yes, real quick, I was honored with a tour of McKay yesterday. It was really exciting to see the progress being made. And thank you again for all those who took time out of their very busy schedules to show me around. And also I had an opportunity to record a video. They're doing a groundbreaking video for McKay, and I have a small piece of that. And so that was very fun. And the person doing the recording is an awesome person to work with.
Good job. Thank you. Dr. Lepol.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of stuff as always. Well, I wish I could be in schools, visiting with students and teachers and learning more about that. What I have been doing is tutoring a lot of students through my school, through Willamette, being a part of that program. I've been doing a lot of policy work in regards to trying to find places within our systems that we can do better, and then working to write policy to make it better. And so that's a lot of the work I've been doing recently. And so I have other ideas and stuff I'm going to bring forward later. And then, sorry, a lot going on, but that, and then also learning about the process of enrolling a kid in school and getting credits figured out. So my sister's on track to graduate, so that's a good thing.
Well, that is nice. You are a good inspiration for your sister. Dr. Blasi.
I'm trying to remember. Since the last time, I participated in South's Counseling Advisory Committee. I know that's not the name of it, but I so much appreciate being able to participate in that and hear all the innovative ways in which counselors at South are reaching out to students during this time. I know we got to hear a little bit about their program, but they just work so hard. And I know it's not just at South, but so a huge shout out to our counselors and the work they're doing right now for our students and families.
Thank you very much. Advisor Mebington, tell us what nice things you have done.
It's a new quarter, so I survived. Also, I got to go to 2 advisory meetings, one for the cabinet members, and I got to go to the one for McCabe too. And we kind of just discussed the students, like what was hard about distance learning and everything. And we kind of gave each other some solutions. So I thought that was really good. It helped a lot. I got some advice. And I gave advice. So yeah, that was something that we did. That was good.
Thank you very much. Good job. And
I'd like to tag on to mine, and it's a little bit offbeat, but I've been asked to gather names from people that would like to go through the new Y that's being built. The old one's been torn down and new construction has started. So if that interests you at all, it's going to be a beautiful facility for all our kids, every place in town. So if you have some interest in going through that and looking at the plans and going through the on-site happenings that are being done, give me a call and I'll set it up for you so you can go on a tour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Bethel, you've been busy, I know.
Yes, I've been busy. I think probably no busier than any other board member who engages the community. There's a lot of concerns and questions, and of course, comments coming from parents around return to school, but also sports. And so just doing a lot of listening and trying to send parents, particularly in the direction that I know they can at least be heard, to pass along their concerns and frustrations, or you know, however they see it. I know that it doesn't always seem like we listen. It's difficult in a forum like this to really engage with folks, but I believe that we do engage as best that we can. And I know that we're taking in various emails, and social media seems to be a flurry. It's like the new way to communicate with folks. So, you know, we're hearing folks, and I know that our administration is doing what they can to participate in conversations around getting kiddos back to a supervised, safe, organized effort of whether it's academics or athletics. And I appreciate their participation in those conversations and hope that we can move back very quickly to the kids that want to get back to those things, that feel comfortable doing so.
Jesse, you're raising your hand. Are you approving what Vice Chair Bethel said? I'm not sure.
No, I think that Director Bethel sounds very busy, and I appreciate the work that she's doing to make sure the people are heard.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I forgot the other half of what I was doing, and they're important stuff. That's why I was like, man, I got to tell them.
Okay, you better say it, Doctor. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. One of them is I'm on the safety steering committee, so it's just been getting to know each other, and you know, getting more community input in. We had some new people join recently, which was super cool from different aspects of the community. And so that's just in the beginning phases. I had my first OSBA board meeting, and that was an important thing I felt like I should share. I'll send you guys an email with like a full kind of my notes on the meeting and how it went, and kind of stuff that I see coming down the pipe that I'll send to the whole county. But one thing I think that would be really, really important for us to look at. So Krista Parent, she gave a presentation about surveys that they did across the whole state, interviewing superintendents, women superintendents, and the data, and like they did it in like a way that was like very fact oriented, and like they didn't disclose names or anything, and just we're looking at the data, and it's not completely done yet. But she did an amazing presentation that opened my eyes to a lot of things of what it would be like being in those roles, and some of the things a lot of superintendents around the state are doing. And while we have a woman superintendent of the second largest school district in the state, which is awesome, at the same time, one, we ensure that we're doing the best that we can to make sure that the fact that she's a woman isn't hurting, you know, what she's doing in the role. And then second, also, she's not always going to be here. There's going to come a time when we have another superintendent. And so we need to ensure that well, not only are we just informed on what's going on around the state, but also ensure that we are doing the best that we can to support whoever our superintendent is. But anyways, I'll send you guys that information.
Thank you very much. I really think, you know, it's been a wonderful time, and all of us are busy under these extraordinary circumstances. But, you know, I had two important things which I have to share. One, Superintendent Perry and I joined and did a little bit of half an hour, a shortened version of orientation for Advisor Mabinton. I wish it was longer, but then we will have it. I think it's really important to, you know, support and nurture, especially when we have, you know, when you have diverse leaders come in. So that is really one thing. Is taking off on this, I made connection, and this Friday I'm going to have a meeting with Dr. Moreland Kapuya. She's in Harvard Medical School. She started an organization and under that Massachusetts General Hospital to provide trauma-informed community outreach for African American and Black communities. And she has done amazing work on systemic inequities and everything. And she's really interested in collaborating and starting some form of mentorship program for our African American Black children to start with. I mean, So I don't know what's going to come out, but at least I'm going to have the meeting, and I will definitely come back and let all of us know so that, we can really start closing the gap. Anything short of closing the gap should not be something we should settle for. And we'll find out having real life leaders who are in Black community. Your eyes cannot see what your mind doesn't know, and they can visualize and see somebody is doing well. That is perhaps the kind of mindset we need for our students, that they can make it, they can see themselves. Nothing short of that is going to pull us out of this generational adversity. So that's an exciting opportunity. I also reached out to the president of American Psychiatric Association, who is also a task force on dismantling systemic racism. So he's also willing to offer any support. So those are two important connections from East Coast. I wanted to really share because I was so excited that there are people willing to help us. So with that, I'm going to ask Superintendent Perry to share her report.
Well, you guys said you wanted to be out by 9:30. So
but we'd like to hear from you, Superintendent Perry.
I'm going to send you 2 videos related to Black History Month. Lynette is featured in one of them, but it is educators and one community member that's in our parent in our district that is, so I would love you to watch that. And then South Salem High School has done a Always a Saxon series for Black History Month, and I'm going to make sure that gets in your email as well. And with that, there's lots of other things to talk about, but
I know.
With your commitment.
Well, thank you very much. Good night. And the meeting is adjourned. Be well.